A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
What's going on, guys? My name is Eldeniro, and welcome to our overdue spoiler review of The Last Jedi. This is something that a lot of people have been requesting. It's something that I really wanted to get to sooner, but I felt like I had to see the movie one more time because just a lot goes on in this movie. It is a very, very different type of Star Wars movie than what we're used to, I feel, and I think that sentiment will certainly be echoed throughout the discussion. I am joined today by Santiago from the Weird With You podcast. He is pretty much a regular, especially when it comes to Star Wars related content. We recently recorded an episode basically talking about what we'd like to see in the future of the Star Wars franchise under Disney and the Star Wars video game and stuff like that. So it was really interesting. Like, a lot of people clearly enjoyed it, and this is going to be an annual thing where myself and Santiago review Star Wars because we're both huge fans, and we both have so much sentimentality attached to it from such a young age. I want to give a shout out to Loosemore, who wanted to be here but is actually like really ill. So Loosemore, if you're listening, I hope you feel better, and I hope that you stop eating minstrels from a bowl with milk in it, because that has always weirded me out, and it's just a weird thing that someone would do. So yeah, anyway, what follows is a discussion with myself and Santiago. I personally loved The Last Jedi, and that will be obvious as the episode goes on. Santiago did not love it, and that will also be obvious. So it's actually really interesting. There's two people who disagree on their overall feelings of the movie, and we come together to discuss why that is. Santiago makes some excellent points that, in my opinion, were largely irrefutable, and that's problematic, but it also doesn't get in the way of the magic of Star Wars for me. So we'll see where it goes from there. But I'd be really interested to know what you guys thought of the movie. Like, before you even play on any further, if you want to leave a comment and tell me what you thought of it, that would be really interesting, because this is one of the most divisive Star Wars movies of all time. In fact, this is the most divisive Star Wars movie of all time, because there is a general consensus on at least two of the prequels, and there's a general consensus on Revenge of the Sith that it's alright. This movie, there isn't really a general consensus. There's a critics' consensus, which is that it's very good. It takes risks. It subverts expectations. It goes where no Star Wars movie has gone before it. The audience score, however, is pretty much 50%. 50% of people liked it, 50% of people didn't. And there are a myriad of reasons as to why people didn't like it. A lot of them stupid, a lot of them political, a lot of them nonsensical, a lot of them just irrelevant to the overall context of it being a movie, right? Like, there's a lot of people choosing to make Star Wars their gender battleground, and it's frustrating to see that seeping into a franchise that I hold so dearly, and when it's something that just I don't really think matters. In the grand scheme of things, what I care about the most is the movie itself. And I just want to know what you guys thought, because there are obviously a lot of Star Wars fans subscribed to me. And I'd like to know if there's a general consensus amongst Midnight Hour listeners, I suppose. So other than that, check out Santiago's podcast, Weird With You. You all know it by now. He is pretty much a regular when it comes to like reviews and things like that. But I've also had him on the podcast plenty of times, and himself and Justine just make an awesome podcast, which I listen to every episode of, and I think you guys should too. So the links for that will be in the description to both their iTunes and their SoundCloud, as well as their Twitter page and Santiago's his own Twitter page, which is Comic Sans, which I think is just a really funny Twitter handle to have. So yeah, go check that out. Enjoy the episode. I'll see you guys on the flip side, I guess. And other than that, all the other relevant links are in the description, the Reddit, everything like that. I've got a wrestling podcast, in case anyone didn't know. I will link that in the description too, to the iTunes feed. It would really help me out if you gave me a rating on there. But I'll talk to you about that in due course, because this is Star Wars time. Anyway, on to the Star Wars episode. May the Force be with you. I'm joined today by Santiago for the Last Jedi review. So, Santiago, welcome back to the Midnight Hour.
Hello! I have returned.
Yes, You have returned from... Where did Luke return from? Anyway, never mind, it doesn't matter. What were your overall impressions of this movie compared to your expectations for this movie? Obviously, the bar was set pretty high from The Force Awakens because it was safe and we all enjoyed it and it was fine. And there's a different director in this movie. We thought that it was going to go in a different direction and that it would be a little bit more free and loose and more original. And yeah, so what did you? What was your overall impression?
So one of the lines that I love from the reviews from this movie, from the critics' reviews of these movies, I love this line that it subverted all expectations.
Yes.
And you know what, Elle? I have to agree 100% because I expected this movie to be good.
Oh, damn, that's such a sick burn.
I mean, like, honestly, if you are about to turn this off because you don't want to hear somebody bashing The Last Jedi, please hold on.
Yeah, because I loved it.
First of all, because Elle loved it. And we're going to have a nice, intelligent conversation about this. Yeah. B is I would hope that people from either listening to my show or from listening to the times at the bare minimum that I've been on the Midnight Hour will know that I'm not a giant bigoted asshole. And I have a lot of issues with the way that people are bashing on this movie and hating on this movie because I think people are attacking it for the wrong reasons. I think that this movie does a lot of things wrong in terms of just film, like how you make a film. I have a lot of issues with certain characters and the way they were introduced. Not that they were introduced, but how little they had to do or anything like that. And I have serious issues with the quality of writing in this film, both like of the overall story and of the dialogue in the film. So I want to talk about that stuff a bit with my side of it. I was very disappointed. I walked out upset because right before going into the movie theater, I told my brother, like, there just no matter how good or bad it is, there's no way that it can be prequel bad. And I walked out kind of feeling like it was, for me, because I don't like the prequels. I've said before, if you like the prequels, that you're totally entitled to love the prequels and enjoy it. If that was your Star Wars childhood, then all the power to you. I never want to take that away from anyone because Star Wars is special and it's special for different people for different reasons. But like, I didn't like the prequels and I thought there were shades of that in this, which is, now that I'm thinking about it, kind of expected because Rian Johnson's a massive defender of the prequels and some of the stuff that they did. So like there's things like that. But I was talking to Elle before the show and it basically came down to that. There's a point that I want to make in my argument. And that is that I kind of have two ways of looking at this film. One of them is the problems that I have with it.
Yeah,
the problems that I have with it, the haves and the have-nots, have with it as a film. As a movie, as the way that it's constructed and the way that it moves forward and the things that it does with some of its characters. And then the other side of it is my disappointment in certain things as a Star Wars fan. And I feel like those disappointments as a Star Wars fan have to be, by necessity, separate from my criticism of the movie as a film.
Yes. Yeah.
I will blend some of those two things together when I'm making some of my points, but know that I keep them very separate in my mind. I don't think it's a bad movie because of what it does to Luke Skywalker or because of a myriad of other reasons that people are complaining, although those things do bother me. What I want to talk, like, as we get towards the end of this whole thing, and I've made some of my points a bit more concisely and clearly, is that I feel like there is a point of negotiation between my dislike for the movie as a film and my dislike for the movie as a Star Wars fan, where I have to pose the question, what would it have taken for me to like this film in spite of all the problems that I have with it as a Star Wars fan? And I think that is where we get into the real problems with the film as a movie. But the other way of saying that, and the other side of that, is that, like, if you are like Elle and you enjoyed the movie and you thought it was great, then, like, I don't want to take that away from you. That's like, everyone is entitled to their own views on everything, really, but especially about films and any sort of media that we're taking in. So don't take my points personally. Don't take my my anger personally. It's not directed at your love for the movie at all. And I'm speaking to the audience. Elle knows this.
Yeah. I'm already offended, so it's fine.
Welcome to 2018. Yeah, they're kind of separate things, and we'll talk about the balance and something else. I guess throughout the discussion.
Yeah.
I'm interested in hearing some of your thoughts on the movie, because as we were talking now just before we hit the record button, I mentioned that you went and you saw the movie. And when I asked you about doing the review, you said, I want to watch it one more time before we do the review.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in hearing your kind of process of coming to this decision that you like this movie.
Yeah, it was really strange, because I watched it, and it's kind of like it's a hell of a movie to watch, in the sense that it's a very busy plot, and there's so much going on everywhere all the time. Like, there's very little sort of lull in the middle of the action. There's just always something to be thinking about while it's happening. And I spent a lot of the movie just with my eyes the size of saucers, like, oh my god, I'm watching this. And I came out of the cinema and I was like, is that the best Star Wars movie I've ever seen? Or did I not actually enjoy one single moment of it? And I've never actually had that feeling before coming out of a theater. Like, I saw The Phantom Menace 9 times in the cinema. I knew that I loved that movie at the time. I was 8 years old, so, leave me alone.
You're forgiven.
Yeah, so...
I liked it the first time I saw it, too.
Yeah, everybody did. Like, they interviewed pretty much every person that came out of this one cinema in America, and everyone said it was amazing, apart from one guy who said it wasn't. And we know that that's not the general consensus now, so obviously...
And that man was Bill Gates.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's obviously some kind of subliminal thing going on there that makes you think you enjoyed it after you watch it for the first time, or I don't know. But there was one thing. There were a few things that I thought of after I had first seen it, and the first thing I think still holds up. It's still true. It's probably the best looking Star Wars movie that there has ever been, and I think it's really unfortunate that it came out in the same year as Blade Runner 2049, because I think this movie would possibly get an Oscar for its visuals. There are so many just shots in this movie and scenes where you could just freeze frame it, take the picture out of the screen and hang it on a canvas on your wall, and it would look sensational. The one that jumps out straight away is the red salt effect on that planet at the end with the those horrible land cruisers, the real budget.
That was awesome.
The budget pound shop land cruisers, like hurtling towards their death. And the aerial shot of that with the red salt being kicked up behind every single move, that was so cool. And even when Finn and Rose had invaded the Star Destroyer, there's a scene after the explosion where Captain Phasma and her troops are walking through this blown open blast doors, and they appear through a cloud of orange smoke, and it's such a damn cool scene. Like, it's really ominous and dark, and it's just a really good presentation for the scene that's about to follow. But there were lots of things like that. There were lots of really good scenes that you could just cut out and they look amazing. Like like I say, it's just, if Blade Runner 2049 hadn't come out this year, well, in this cycle, we would be looking at Star Wars and thinking that there's a possible like visual effect Oscar or nomination in there, I think, because it's just fantastic looking. So that stands to it as a movie, I think, and it's not something that I ever really look for in Star Wars movies, but this one was just noticeably striking at every moment. Other than that, even though this one scene I'm about to talk, this one arc within the movie that I'm about to mention was pretty much hated by everybody, it seems. It was cool seeing the upper echelon society in Star Wars and seeing something other than poverty. Even though this society existed on the backs of the poor, it was cool seeing a casino in Star Wars. Like, I actually quite enjoyed it. We know that it's the one way that they can showcase wealth in Star Wars, because we know that there is gambling in that universe, and we also know that there's weapons, and therefore they combine these two things that we already know are there. And like, was it perfect? No. Was it necessary? Not really. But was it interesting? Like, yeah, I think it was. I think it was a cool thing to see that. Apart from that, I enjoyed the fallout from the opening scene with the First Order kind of immobilizing everyone and actually like destroying things, because I think it was about time that we witnessed the might and power of this organization, especially after that horrendous opening scene. With that, like, I think Donald Gleason is a really good actor, but General Hux is just a terrible character. And
It's like J.J. Abrams wanted to go one way with him, and it feels like Rian Johnson was just like, I hate this character.
Yeah.
I hate him, so I'm going to turn him into a clown.
Yeah.
I actually, a lot of people love that opening scene. That was the moment the movie started. You know, you've got the Star Wars theme comes up, the opening crawl. Interestingly, actually, even before we get to that scene, the opening crawl, I'm like, is this a little bit shorter than other opening crawls have been? And, like, not that the opening crawls were ever wordy or anything like that. It just felt, like, very simplistic. I guess because it starts immediately after the events of Force Awakens, there's not much to say.
It
kind of just caught you up on what happened in Force Awakens, whereas with the difference between A New Hope and Empire and Return of the Jedi, there's years that have gone in between, supposedly, right?
I think that you could tweak the Last Jedi opening crawl a tiny bit, and you could play it at the front of The Empire Strikes Back, and people would be like, yes, that's like the crawl in The Last Jedi literally describes the plot of The Empire Strikes Back. Did you notice that? It's like a carbon copy. And the movie doesn't borrow too heavily from it, but the whole premise that they're setting is identical, which I found
the movie actually has more in common with Return of the Jedi than it does with
that's
Empire Strikes Back, which is, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but that's kind of an issue.
Yeah.
And what that implies for what's going to happen in the next film. So, but yeah, that first scene, and I see Poe, and I'm like, yeah, I love Poe. Poe's cool. Because I liked that banter that he had in the first movie, because there wasn't a lot of it. And it felt like in this one scene at the beginning, there was already too much of it. And I'm like, they wasted all of his dialogue, his bantery dialogue in the first scene. It's like they took that Han Solo, no, everyone's fine here. Thanks. Everything's fine. We're okay. How are you?
Yeah.
You know, like, and they extended it for way longer than it was necessary.
They made it too close to the bone, right? Like, there are things that need to remain a mystery in Star Wars, and just the idea that you would say, I was holding for this the fact that there's a hold function.
Yep.
Like, that annoys me.
Oh, I was watching the movie and I thought, this is the shit that Al was talking about in our Star Wars episode when Han Solo says, well, then I'll see you in hell.
Exactly.
You know, it's exactly the same shit. It's like, what do you mean they have hold?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. I'm not comfortable knowing that.
Yeah.
Having said that, Poe Dameron, right, is a cool character on the face of things. I look at him, I'm like, he's cool. Oscar Isaac is absolutely awesome. This guy's a really good pilot. He goes on a kill streak in The Force Awakens.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the coolest fucking things ever, but I don't think he's had a moment of good dialogue in the entire saga. Like, he says, we got company, like 5 times in the first movie.
Yep.
And in this movie, he's like, oh, I was holding for hooks. And he's like being a massive jackass all over the place. Like, and then, like, another thing is Laura Dern's character, Vice Admiral Amelin Holdo. Like, she's, like, a massive bitch. about her. Like, it's like Poe is like a hothead, and it's known that he's a hothead, and
Yep.
she doesn't do anything. Like, she actually shows terrible man management ability in her attempts to tame him, because she actually just makes the situation so much worse.
She's completely inept.
Oh my god, it's and there's another thing that annoyed me about her. I guess we can just jump around things that we didn't like here, but when they're evacuating the ship, and actually here's a problem I have with the movie. They're evacuating the ship, and Amelin is like, "I'm gonna stay behind," and everyone is like, "All right, cool, enjoy your death." Like, if C-3PO were to do it, like, I wouldn't give a shit. Like, do they really not have a droid that they can program to die with the ship? Like, they lose so many important people this way.
I have so many thoughts about that scene.
It's ridiculous.
It's a very ridiculous scene.
Yeah.
Because I guess we're gonna jump around, so this is gonna be kind of out of order for my argument, but
yeah, but it'll be thematically in sequence, because we're gonna.
Exactly. It'll be thematically in sequence to what we're talking about. So she turns this ship around and suicides it through hyperspace, through the I guess it's not the dreadnought, it's the
Star Destroyer.
Yeah, no, but it's the big one.
The Super Star Destroyer.
It's not the dreadnought. The dreadnought is the thing that they take out at the beginning.
Yeah, that's right.
This is like the I forget what the class is called. The even bigger ship. It's like the fucking Starkiller base of this movie.
Yeah.
It's like, we took something from the first movie and made it even bigger. And slightly different. It's a slightly different triangle.
I think
anyway.
It is called a Super Star Destroyer. Have I made that up? That is a thing in Star Wars,
No,
isn't it?
Yes, but this one isn't a super.
Not.
This is
It's not one of those.
something else, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, so she goes through hyperspace through this ship and like splits it in half.
Beautiful moment,
It's
though.
one of the most beautiful scenes in Star Wars history.
Yeah.
And I remember like looking at it, because I already at this point was having some serious issues with the film, and I suddenly the scene happens, and I remember, like, me and my brother, we both went, whoa, like that was cool.
Yeah.
That was so cool. And that lasted about like 5 seconds. And then I thought, wait a minute, why haven't they been doing this since the freaking start? Never mind the start of this chase. Why haven't any of the sides been weaponizing ships with hyperdrives since the beginning? If this is something that you can do, if you can fly a ship through hyperspace, through an Imperial ship, and blow it up, I mean, like, why even bother with it? Couldn't you do that with the Death Star? Like, it doesn't. If you've been able to do this the whole time, then why isn't that like an actual tactic to suicide ships, like large ships? Like, take one that's broken. It doesn't even have to be fully functional. It just needs to have a hyperdrive in it and have enough mass to cause damage.
Yeah.
It actually probably doesn't even need to be big if you're targeting it properly. You could probably send it right through the reactor of the Death Star.
I guess I could have one answer to that would be probably the answer to my question of why didn't they just have a droid die with the ship, is probably that for some bizarre reason in this universe they program droids to have emotions for no discernible reason, and therefore an emotional creature is not likely to want to do that. But also, there is no suicide in the Star Wars universe. Like, they don't, like, no one has ever committed suicide in the Star Wars universe. And I know that this is slightly different.
Except that Admiral Holdo.
Yeah. Well,
and Rogue One.
That's the Rogue One thing is different though, because they went in with the idea of getting out.
But they knew that it was essentially a suicide mission.
But it was built on hope. So
Okay, yeah, it was, but they accomplished the mission. They were. I get what your point is about Rogue One, but I guess my thing is like it doesn't make sense that you wouldn't have done this from the very beginning.
Well, I think if you think about the concept of the philosophical concept of suicide and apply it to the Star Wars universe, there's nowhere for it to go. You can't plant it down.
I know. Okay,
so
we're getting away from the, I guess, like the issue here, but like
well let's just imagine
we're getting kind of silly, but like this is the idea. You're saying like it can't be a droid because the droids all have emotions and stuff, and it would be like the same as somebody committing suicide. But if this is a valid strategy, then why, like, there's no autopilot, there's no droid that they can make that doesn't have feelings, there's no just machine that can make sure that the computers on board the ship aren't sophisticated enough to. She didn't actually, when you look at her, she didn't actually do anything except for engage the hyperdrive.
I know.
That's the only thing she did.
But it's a lever. It needs a human to push it.
I appreciate you trying to argue this from the other side, but like this is kind of the fact that you can even sit there and question it, the fact that it takes away from that moment, whether or not you can rationalize it within the canon, is problematic. Because
I think I can rationalize it in the canon,
and that's fine. That's fine. I'm just saying the fact that you watch this and you're like, that was awesome, but why haven't they, like, even if you're wrong, that moment of why haven't they been doing this from the beginning? Like, that's no good. This is one of the visually, this is my problem with it, is that it was so cool that it pisses me off that it doesn't make sense that they didn't do this from the beginning. Never mind, like, I guess, like, even let's take it to just this movie. What was their, like, they literally, their plan involved at the very end. How would their plan have played out any differently if none of the other movie had happened, right? If Finn hadn't, if Holdo hadn't been a dick to Poe, right? And they had flown off, they hadn't flown off, right? And they had kept to Leia's plan and Holdo's plan that apparently they had at the same time. How would this have ended any differently? Like, I guess everybody would have gone off the ship, and the ship would have continued forward, and they wouldn't have seen the transports going down to Crate. Yeah. Which apparently there's cloaked ships now in Star Wars. Like, I don't understand why they couldn't see those ships before, but that's fine. Until DJ told them about it. Yes, like it. DJ. So what? So like that ship is capable of going forward. So like, what are they putting a brick on the physical accelerator of this ship? How is this ship able to go? Like, you're able to program it to continue forward by itself. Like, unless Holdo was planning on staying aboard that ship until it got destroyed, or Leia was planning to, or somebody was planning to, then that ship has the ability to be programmed to continue moving forward.
Yeah, that's true.
So why don't they have the ability to like it's here's one of my issues with this movie. We should never have even gotten to this point in the film. The plot of this film does not make sense. It's completely stupid. It's ridiculous. It is. It's completely ridiculous. The beginning of the movie, Poe's thing, I'm like, that joke didn't quite land. Like, it was kind of a chuckle, but like, okay, whatever.
It was bullshit. Nobody in the cinema that I was in laughed. Nobody. Not a single person even. In fact, it was mostly just audible groans. Bill Burr has this thing where he says that Irish audiences are relentless and they are the most difficult people to perform in front of because there are some things that they just will not let up for. And I think this is one of those things where it was just like,
it was really bad.
Come the fuck on, like, just stop with that. So yeah, that was a rough start.
It wasn't good. Anyway. Here's another thing we're going to do, is I'm going to bitch at people complaining about stupid things.
Oh, yes. I'm all for that. Yeah.
The bombs, people being like, # there's no gravity in space. I don't like the argument of like, well, there's no sound in space, but in Star Wars there's sound, so the rules in space and Star Wars are different. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. There's a companion book that came out with the Last Jedi that clearly states that these bombs are magnetic. They're powered by magnets. Easily explained in the canon. Doesn't necessarily have to be explained on screen. I think it's just a silly thing. Like, I came up with that as a potential answer as I watched it. I was like, how are they falling? Oh, they're probably magnetic.
Would have been cool, in fairness, if they were just called magnosphere bombs, or, you know, like...
I think they are.
Okay.
That's the thing, is I think the name of the bombs themselves are actually... There's a little thing next to it that explains that they have like a magnetic thing on it, but I think the bombs themselves are called something to do with magnets.
Yeah.
I might be wrong about that point. But anyway, I think it's a silly point to complain about this movie on, that, like, how did the bombs fall? I think that's dumb.
Yeah, it's Star Wars. They're wizards in space with laser swords.
Yeah.
Like, shut up. Yeah.
But here's where we get to my point, is that it's a Star Wars movie. There's wizards in space. There's laser swords. There's all sorts of crazy shit. There's aliens and all weird shit. It's a Star Wars, you know? There is a certain suspension of disbelief that you are internally prepared to go into this movie with. You walk into this movie and you know there's going to be space wizards, there's going to be weird ass aliens, there's going to be like stuff that there's no way can happen is going to happen in this movie. There are people with telekinetic powers, maybe because there's microbes living in them called midichlorians, but that seems to have been thrown out the window now in favor of a more spiritual approach like the original movies, but whatever. You know, like there's stuff going on that cannot happen in our world. It's not possible. So you already go in with the willing suspension of disbelief to a point. Fair. When that willing suspension of disbelief is tested by something so stupid that it shouldn't have made it out of the writing room, it breaks the movie. Because you're already, like, if like your normal everyday, like for a drama that supposedly takes place in our world, your willing suspension of disbelief is, you know, down here, you know, belly button level. You can't see me, but I'm and then for a Star Wars movie, it's like way over your head, right? But you're willing. It's a willing suspension of disbelief, right? It's up there. It's way up there, right? Anything that goes over that, like anything that would cause you to be like, wait, well, that doesn't make sense, that goes over that is problematic because you're already way up there. So your stuff, it doesn't have to be necessarily airtight, right? Like the bombs or whatever. There can be like an in-canon explanation that makes you go like, oh yeah, well that makes sense. They're magnetic, fine. My issue is this Mad Max Fury Road wannabe plot in space, or lack thereof plot. Mm-hmm. How does it make sense? It doesn't make any sense, L.
They're something about...
They're cars. They're not cars. They're not trucks even. They're not boats. They're not limited to kind of which axis they move in or in which direction they go, which way is right side up, which way is right side down. They're not limited in any way like that, right? Moreover, they have hyperdrives. Okay, so the Rebel flagship escapes. They engage their hyperdrive, they escape. Hux says we have them on a thread. You don't really know what that means. It's actually really vague and problematic from a writing perspective that your audience has no idea what the hell you're talking about. Even though Snoke is like, oh, I see what you mean. I see what you did there. And whereas an audience, we're like, no, I mean, I don't see what does he mean he has them on a thread? That doesn't make any sense. Not revealed until upsettingly later in the film that they are being tracked through hyperspace. I don't know why that wouldn't have been revealed there, but anyway, I digress. They track them through hyperspace and they come out right behind them. We're back at square one. Okay, that's a problem. Your film now has a problem, okay? in a good way. There's an issue here. How did the rebels escape from the ship that can track them through hyperspace? Rian Johnson's answer is it can't. Okay, so what's their plan? Because surely these massive, like this capital ship and these dreadnoughts and everything that are like these other Star Destroyers that are following it, right? Of which there are only like 4 or 5, by the way.
Can I just ask, is Dreadnought referenced any other time in any other Star Wars movie?
No, I think Dreadnoughts are... I might be wrong about that. I think Dreadnoughts are new.
Yeah, because they made such a big deal out of it, and I was like, what the fuck is
They
this?
took
I've
it,
never
they took
heard
it
of
down
this
right
before.
with a bunch of bombs. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they lost a bunch of people, but that was actually Poe's fault, not the bomber's fault, so...
Yeah.
Anyway... There's only like 4, maybe 5 ships following them. The rebels. Would you say that's fair? 4 or 5 Star Destroyers following them, including the big guy?
Yeah.
Snoke ship.
But I'd say that they're all like I'd say just one of those smaller Star Destroyers following them is enough to obliterate their fleet. Like I didn't really get any sense that they had anything going on their ships or anything like that.
Right. So interesting idea. The rebel ship is smaller and faster. So it can actually stay at enough distance that the Imperial heavy weapons, or Imperial First Order heavy weapons, can't actually penetrate or damage the shields in any significant way. That's kind of cool. I'm totally down with that.
Yeah, I like that.
That's fine. Okay, so the idea is like, okay, we're going to keep them at a distance. Then Kylo Ren comes out with himself and 2 other TIE fighters. And they blow up. They make it through all of the rebel ships that are fleeing. Because remember, they're running out of fuel, not lasers.
Yeah,
they make it through all the rebel ships because Kylo Ren is so amazing. Kylo Ren is so amazing. He makes it through all of these ships. And he blows up the bridge of the lead rebel the lead rebel vessel, the resistance vessel, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? He blows up. He doesn't blow up the bridge. He takes his thumb away from the ignition.
He relinquishes.
That's an important point. He didn't do it. His buddies, his wingmen, they did it. Wingwomen. We don't even. They might be aliens. We don't know. Might be a species that doesn't have gender.
We know they're not droids anyway.
They probably couldn't. But like, can a droid kill? Yeah, they can. But so. Interesting. Droids have no problem taking others' lives, but they can't take their own life in your logic.
Well, no, and
battle droids were made.
And prove me wrong.
Yeah, you're right. I can't. You have good points, solid points, the best points. So they have to keep them at bay. They have to stay far enough ahead as they're running out of fuel. Kylo Ren comes in with his TIE fighters, blows up the bridge, and then they fly away. How many TIE fighters do you think are on each of those Imperial ships?
I guess judging from the hangar of the ship in The Force Awakens, like 10 on each one. Like,
there's got to be a shitload of TIE fighters.
Yeah.
Of it. Even considering, like, think about like the very first scene, right? That fight when they go to blow up the dreadnought.
Yeah, when they all fly out. Like, there's
how many TIE fighters are coming out of that thing?
Like 150 or something.
Minimum. Okay? So let's be really generous to Rian Johnson and say that there's 150 on each ship, and let's say there's like 1,000 on the capital ship, just because it's freaking huge. Because you don't get a good sense of the size, but I forget, they said how big that capital ship is, and I think they said it's like over 30 miles wide.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's that's why I said it was Starkiller Base all over here. Like, it's like, we need to make it even bigger.
I didn't even get a sense that it was that big.
No, you don't, because you can barely see it because it's black.
Yeah, that's true.
Why
yeah,
is
it
it
blends
black?
in with space.
Anyway, so let's say that there's like a shitload. We'll just call it a conservative shitload of TIE fighters.
Okay.
3 TIE fighters were able to break in, past the rebel defenses as they were fleeing because the rebels aren't really firing back at all, and blow up the bridge of the lead ship. Poe is able, in the beginning of the film, to blow out all of the cannons on the top of a dreadnought by himself, because once you get in past the shields, apparently you can just blow shit up without, having to go through the shields.
Well,
fine, that makes sense.
Poe is a hell of a pilot too.
You don't need a hell of a pilot when you have like 1,500 TIE fighters at your disposal. Like, they should have been able to just send out the TIE fighter. Like, they've already shown that they don't give a crap about their soldiers or conserving numbers.
Yeah.
Why would they care? Why would they care?
The only thing I can say about that is maybe General Hux wanted them to die a really slow and painful, agonizing death, and because he's such a buffoon, he just did not even comprehend the idea that they might come up with an alternative plan along the way, other than perishing in space.
That's a whole other issue we're going to get into with Hux and the First Order. But here's the other side of it. Like, they're perturbed that they can't hit the rebels with their heavy weapons. Is this the entirety of the First Order fleet? Do you think this is the whole fleet? Like, honestly, does it make sense that this is the entirety of the First Order fleet pursuing these, like, 3-4 vessels?
Certainly not, no.
It doesn't make sense, but let's pretend that it does. Let's pretend that this is the entire First Order fleet that has the galaxy so terrified. Because remember that these are the people who are now vying for control of the galaxy. 5 ships.
Well, they have destroyed the Republic, though. So, like,
it's a base that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, no, exactly. But if anything, there's a power vacuum, and the control is up for grabs.
Right. By 5 ships.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they don't completely outnumber the Resistance.
But that exactly. Like,
but why would the rest of the galaxy be afraid?
But what is the rest of the galaxy, right? Like, the 1% is on that. What's that? Crete Lodge or whatever the fuck that other planet is called.
I forget what.
So those
Canto
guys, that's the one. See, so those guys probably own like most of the resources in the galaxy. You definitely get a sense that like Star Wars is a huge collection of unrelated, unconnected, impoverished planets, and we know that this other place. So, in all likelihood, the only people who can assume power of the galaxy are either the First Order or the Resistance, and the Resistance, they're screwed. Like, even their plan relies on reinforcements that we later learn don't even exist. So it's maybe those other the other ships comprising their fleet are on the other side of the galaxy. Maybe they're sprawled all across the galaxy because they only require a certain amount of ships in each quadrant of the galaxy now in order to exercise that control. They definitely have enough ships to get the job done here. I mean, I could excuse that. I'm
just saying that the Empire feels like a threat because they are always present everywhere. And this actually feels like they're trying to tell us that this is the entirety of the fleet. If it isn't the entirety of the fleet, then you have a bigger problem with what I'm about to say. But let's pretend that it is the entirety of the fleet. And they have to chase this ship that is smaller and faster than them. What is a First Order commanding officer to do? How could we possibly stop these ships? They're faster. They're staying out of the range of our guns. Well, I know. We have freaking hyperdrives. They can only move forward. So you know where they're going to be. Do you get where I'm going with this?
Yeah, but then...
You know where their ship is going to be in the next 10 minutes, in the next 4 hours, in the next 18 hours, in the next day. You know exactly where their ship is going to be.
That's very true, yeah.
So why is a Canadian guy in a movie theater in Ontario with no military training able to come up with a solution to the problem of a military officer who has presumably had a lot of training and is in command of a giant, in a fictional universe with things that don't even exist here. So I have less experience even than that because he at least knows how a hyperdrive works, presumably.
This is a bombshell. If you assume that even it is their full fleet, they can still go like, all right, we're going to send one ship this far forward, another one this far forward, and then the rest of us, we just hang around here and follow them, and then we'll be able to guide the other two because we know that they're not going to stray far. Yeah. So that's it.
And it's a huge problem.
Yeah, that is a massive problem. Yeah.
It's a massive problem. This is a massive problem with this movie because if you recognize that that's an issue with the plot, and there's going to be a lot of people who are like, what's so nitpicky and blah, blah, blah.
No, it's bad writing, though.
I think it's just bad writing.
Yeah,
I think there's no way that this should have made it out. They're not boats. They're not cars. They're not trucks. They're not Mad Max cars. They have hyperdrives. It doesn't make any sense. It's completely stupid. And while the rest of the movie you might think it's fun or enjoyable or whatever, the rest of the movie shouldn't happen. Because I've already given my suspension of disbelief up to a point. And this destroys that point. Because it's something so simple, so stupid. It's something so easy to spot and to fix that it only, like, the only in-canon solution is that the Empire, or if I keep calling them the Empire, the First Order is completely inept. And if they're completely inept, and this is the entirety of their fleet, why is anybody afraid of them? Especially when, later in the movie, Snoke dies. Why would anybody be afraid of the First Order if they're so completely freaking clueless? That's the only in-canon explanation for why they don't do this, is that they're just that... It's exactly what you said. Hux wants them to die slowly and painfully and miserably. That is the stupidest reason in the world. And the problem is that in the original movies, and even in the prequels, the rebels or the good guys always got out of trouble because they were more clever than the bad guys, more clever than the Empire. They don't get out of trouble in The Last Jedi. Actually, they don't really get out of trouble at all. But when they do, it's not because they're smarter or because they were more clever or because they did something unexpected. It's because Hux is a dumbass.
It's because they're smarter by default. Because the other one is less smart than them, like, if anything. You know what I mean? Like, it's because they are actively choosing to not engage with the smart part of their brains. I think Hux is, like, completely just a complete and utter goof. And you do get a sense that the First Order is very youthful sort of organization. Yep. Like,
I feel so bad for Domhnall Gleeson.
On
the other hand, he's in a Star Wars movie, and, like, who cares?
Yeah, I don't know how sorry I feel for him. Like,
but he's a good actor.
He's a great actor.
That's why I feel shit for him, because it's like, on some level, like, until he looks at his bank account, every morning when he wakes up, he has to, like, feel some tinge of regret. And then he looks at his bank account and he's fine again. And the fact that he's in Star Wars, like, that's comforting.
Listen, but, if, like, this goes any way towards a world where he is in less fucking movies, I'm all for it. Because I do really like the guy, but he is in literally every single thing I've watched for the last, like, 5 years in a row. It's like there's like no movie I can watch where his fucking face doesn't just pop up and I'm like, Donald Gleeson. Like,
tokenizing gingers.
Yeah, tokenizing Irish. And like, it does annoy me that he has this just really overzealous English accent. It doesn't annoy me because he's Irish, but at the same time, there are Scottish people in Star Wars. There are no Irish people in Star Wars.
Why not let him have his accent?
Yeah.
For that matter, why does Finn have to lose his accent, really? Because only bad guys can be English in Star Wars.
It's true. But then, like, I don't know.
Except for Obi-Wan and Rey. Like, that's it.
Yeah. Well, Qui-Gon Jinn is Irish, I guess. He has a neutral kind of accent.
He sounds just the same as he sounds in any movie when he's trying to sound like an American.
Yeah. What the hell even is his... Yeah, no, he just...
I have a very specific set of skills.
Particular set of skills.
Yeah.
I will find you.
And I will show you the ways of the
I will train you.
You will be a Jedi.
You will be a Jedi.
I promise. But yeah, just like I guess I was coming to the end of my tether with Donald Gleason, and then him being in this movie, in this role, in this awful character, it just really set me off. Although he is redeemed by his speech in The Force Awakens. That is awesome. That's a great scene right there. But
yeah, he clearly watched a lot of Hitler.
Yeah.
So it was very, and it was well delivered. Like, I thought, like, oh, okay, like like, I can see them having to hospitalize him after delivering that speech, because his veins were literally popping.
I love the way it's actually a compliment to say he's clearly watched a lot of Hitler. I don't know why it's just hilarious to me.
Very Hitler, very Hitler. Yeah, okay, so that's kind of like where a lot of the problems begin, is that the rest of the movie shouldn't really happen.
Yeah, okay, you've completely blown the blast doors open on the plot there. It's weird, though, that I never even thought of that. Like,
I think it's weird that no one else has thought of that.
Yeah,
either.
I haven't seen that criticism anywhere. I guess, like, we're calling it bad writing. It is bad writing, but only once you kind of dig a little bit. Like, you know, in there are these kinds of plot devices used a lot. Like, I know one famous one is in The Dark Knight Rises. They're robbing the stock exchange, which famously closes very early in the afternoon, like 5 p.m. or something. But whatever, so they're robbing the stock exchange in broad daylight, and then they drive into a tunnel, and then when they come out, all of a sudden it's pitch black outside, so that Batman can appear, because he can't appear in daylight, because Batman's... But so you don't ever think about that, because Chris Nolan actually... There are lots of plot holes in Chris Nolan. Well, it's not really a plot hole, I guess, but there are lots of things like that in Nolan movies, but he's so... Like, that's it, actually his main skill as a director, is that he's able to paper over those cracks in ways that you wouldn't even imagine. And I guess that they must do that in some way in this movie. And what's weird is the whole way through I was thinking this is an entirely ridiculous premise, but there must be some precedent for it. And I was thinking about the Falcon in The Empire Strikes Back, when they're trying to go into hyperspace, but the hyperdrive is being chewed by the... what are those stupid bat things? Minox.
Yeah.
So it won't go into hyperspace, but they're still just outside of the sort of... They're being hit, but it's not heavy fire. Like, I could map that version of, like, that chase onto this. This is obviously a more prolonged version, but... Yeah.
Yeah, except for that they're clever, and their solution is to go into an asteroid field, which is suicide.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that is a much better conclusion, but I'm just talking about how in the middle of it, like, that's a thing that happens, so therefore I thought of that, and I thought, oh, well, this is a thing that can happen, you know what I mean?
You can say, like, oh, how convenient that there was an asteroid field there. Like, yeah, like, that's Star Wars, is that also. But that's better writing than, like, why would another ship just pop up? Don't worry about it.
And
no one's gonna notice it. This is how little they think of their audience, though. This is the problem that I have. That, like, okay, fair, you didn't notice, that's fine. That doesn't mean that you're like bad at watching movies or anything. Like, nobody's saying that. What I'm saying is that once you do notice, you realize how little they think of you that they thought you wouldn't notice.
But I didn't notice. So,
and they think very little of you.
I'm like, yeah, you thought the right amount of me.
But now you know, and it's like, isn't it kind of feel shitty to be like, that's how little they think of their audience? Like, the lowest common denominator is so low that they don't even feel like they have to paper over that giant crack.
I'm choosing to...
That's like being shown a potential home to buy, a potential apartment to rent, and there's a wall missing, and it's just like outside. And they're just conveniently steering you away to not look at that wall. And they're like, why is there a chill on my back? And it's like, oh, it's a feature. There's just a chill on this side of the room. Don't worry about it. Like it's such a huge problem with the plot that because if you, let's say they solve that issue, another Star Destroyer appears, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have no way out. It's a no-win scenario. Like there's no way that they can escape. What does that force? It forces the rebels to either be the resistance to either be clever, more clever than the First Order, or if you want to keep with the themes of failure and redemption that exists throughout this movie, which is one of the more interesting parts of this movie, is that idea of failure and redemption, right? That's one of the main thrusts of this movie. Some people are confusing that with plot, because a lot of people are saying like there was no plot to this movie, and I see a lot of people saying on the Twitter, like, oh, the plot of this movie was all about failure and redemption. Like, don't you get it? And it's like, failure and redemption aren't plot. They are themes.
Those are themes, yeah.
Those are themes. Those are not plot. Plot is like a series of events that leads to different actions that have consequences. And throughout those, you weave themes. But they're not... Anyway. The point is, it's... What's the other option? Is they fail. And they are going to get blown up. What happens there? Now, here's the thing. They're going to get blown up. How does the hyperspace tracking work? We don't know. Okay, they are able to pick one ship and track it, presumably. So they're tracking the lead rebel ship, or are they tracking all of the rebel ships? If they're just tracking the lead rebel ship, then they all could have gone on one of the other ships and just buggered off.
Yeah.
Right? So they're probably tracking all of the ships. But if they're tracking all of the ships, then why did they not realize when the shuttles launched to go down to Crate? Because those shuttles are hidden. So there must be some way for them to escape that situation. So let's say all the Star Destroyers, the ship is out of range, all the Star Destroyers, hyperspace around them, boom, 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 boom. Looks really awesome. There's just like a ring of Star Destroyers all around the rebel fleet. They have nowhere to go. They're completely trapped. Lost all hope. Except for somebody has a plan. Right?
The Guardians of the Galaxy arrive.
Don't even joke. We are so freaking close to that, actually. It upsets me so much at the end of this movie that that's a potential, even in a dream. But anyway, like, have them have failure. They fail. The majority of them get blown up. Only a few are able to escape. Who are the ones who are able to escape? Maybe it's not even a thing about like they chose for certain. Maybe they all tried to escape and only one of them did. Right? That's fine. Like maybe it is like the end of Hoth situation where like only a few ships get away from Hoth at the very end, right? Yeah. Maybe it's just like solo fighters and things like that. We know that the solo fighters have hyperdrives. Now the hangar was blown up by Kylo Ren, so that's a problem. But there was other opportunities here to take the story somewhere interesting and keep with the themes of failure and redemption. Like, I'm not a writer, like for movies anyway. So like I can't sit here and pretend that I could have done a better job. I'm just not gonna do that because like I can't. Otherwise, I would have been doing it. I would have written The Last Jedi.
Yeah, it's not your job as a critic to do that anyway.
And yeah, that's the other side of it. But my point is that like, if I can sit here and dismantle the plot to such a degree that the rest of the movie shouldn't even technically be possible, then like I think you have a serious issue, and it leads to like I said, the only canon solution is that the First Order is just that inept. And if the First Order is just that inept, then what do we have to cheer about for our heroes? When even in the animated show Star Wars Rebels or even Clone Wars, but let's say Rebels because it's current, when they get out of a situation, it's because they are more clever, right? Even if there's massive losses, right, and they're the only ones to survive, they get out because they had a moment where they were more clever, something for us to root for. maybe not all of them make it out. Like, maybe this was the opportunity, like, sorry to say, to kill Leia, right?
Mm.
And we can talk about that scene.
Yeah. I have a theory
Because
about that scene.
that was atrocious. But, you know, we'll let you talk for a bit. You talk about that scene, because I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Well, one of the things I noticed, obviously, was that Kylo Ren relinquished control of his trigger, and his buddies flew in and they blew up the bridge, and Leia went out into space. I'm clinging. I'm really, really reaching here. I know that this is not really the case, but if I were to find out that this was the case, I think it would improve the scene tenfold. Kylo Ren sits in his TIE fighter and uses the Force to lure Leia back onto the bridge because he's awash with guilt, and obviously he's conflicted and all of these things. And I think that right there is just a way better scenario than the reality.
Oh, man. Now you've made me more angry at the scene, because that would have been cooler.
Yeah, but that might still be true.
It's not still true. You see her twitch her hand and her eyes open, and she does the Luke Skywalker finger thing where she like uses the Force, and she Mary Poppins back onto the ship. And she bangs on the door.
She has never used the Force before.
She's felt things.
Yeah. She sensed things, yes. But she
zero
hasn't...
training. It's the new Star Wars, man. They are superpowers. They're not something that you train in. You just get them.
Okay. There's actually a really good argument to be made about the how bad the writing is in the latest saga. Going on, like from the foundation of your idea that the rebels, whatever, like the good guys have to be more clever. Like they haven't even been clever. Like even in the Force Awakens, they're not clever. They're lucky. Everything that happens to them is completely by chance. Even the idea of going and blowing up the Starkiller base happens by chance. Like Finn wants to go there because he wants to be with Rey. Like he's a garbage man, and he goes there and he hasn't a clue what he's doing, and they chance their way in, and it all happens by luck. And then,
ironically, Rogue One actually makes them seem even dumber, because in Rogue One, like to destroy the first Death Star, people sacrificed so much just to get the plan so that they could have an idea of how to blow that thing up. There had to be a flaw manufactured into the Death Star by a traitor who was doing it for the rebellion to redeem himself, a scientist.
Oh man, this conversation is going in a direction that is just... I'm starting to become convinced that the new trilogy is bad.
Dude, like, and like the saddest part is that this movie retroactively goes back and makes The Force Awakens a worse movie.
Yeah, it does.
Because The Force Awakens, this is not, and this is another thing, just like the bombs that I think is stupid, this is not about people coming up with cool fan theories and getting too attached to fan theories and throwing them out. I had fan theories. I watched fan theories. I wanted them all to be wrong. Because I want to be surprised when I go to the movies. But just because something surprises you, just because the movie subverted expectations, according to those critics, doesn't mean that the surprises or the ways that it subverted expectations are inherently good. Just because something isn't what you expected doesn't mean that that's a good thing. Yeah, it's nice to be surprised, but when the surprise is, hey, we didn't really like a lot of the plot and characters from the first movie, so we just kind of threw them out. Sorry.
Some of them were good though.
I'm saying that that's what they did with The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
You're saying, sorry, that some of the surprises were good.
Yeah, in The Last Jedi, yeah. I think finding out that Poe was wrong is good, because I think I've seen that, like, there should be no reason that he's right. Like, I didn't want Laura Dern's character to be right because she was a dick, but at the same time, I didn't want Poe to be right because that was just too obvious, and I liked that they subverted that. I don't think they did it in a very tactful way because, like, Amelin Holdo is just completely unlikable. But I am happy
because I love Laura Dern.
Yeah, right. But anyway, I'm happy enough with that kind of switch. I thought that was pretty cool. Another thing is, And I still hold this to be true, and I really hope that you don't take this away from me. But the last hour of this movie is the most enjoyable hour of Star Wars movie history. From the
Really?
moment where, yeah, from the moment where Rey is face to face with Snoke, from there, from that scene on, that's the most fun I've ever had watching a Star Wars movie, and it was true both times I saw it, and I'm going to see it again, and I'm really hyped for that. Like the moment where they are on the bridge in that ship, and Snoke is everything looks like it's lost, and Kylo Ren lifts up the lightsaber, and Snoke is like, oh, I can sense that he's about to strike down his enemy, and then he cuts Snoke in half, and from there's just this unbelievable lightsaber, probably the best lightsaber battle that where it's not two people fighting each other, like the best lightsaber action outside of a
Yeah.
duel, if you know what I mean. It was also really cool to see what those red coated guards are made of. I assume there's a name for them that I never.
Praetorian Guards.
I knew that you would know. But so like we've seen them in countless movies, and they, well, not countless movies. I mean, there are only like 8 movies. We've seen them in movies, and we don't know what they do, and we finally get to find that out, and it's awesome. Like, they didn't disappoint. That entire thing is so cool. And then you think this is it. Kylo Ren is going to join forces with Rey, but he doesn't want that. He wants to make his own empire. Like, he still wants to be the bad guy. It's just that he wants to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
That is such a damn interesting transition right there. Like, I did not see that coming. I knew that something was awry, but I thought it was just more of his conflict, and I actually think he's a fantastic character. I really hated him in The Force Awakens on the very first watch, but I fucking loved him in this movie, and that entire situation was class. So that helped that sort of created a backbone for the rest of the movie to build off of, and I thought it was great. It was just widespread devastation and destruction and hopelessness, and it was just really cool.
See, my thing with that is I'm fine with the decision to kill Snoke if The Force Awakens doesn't do what it does. Because and here we're talking about, like, this has nothing to do with Star Wars criticism of, like, as like a fan. This has to do with more like how you structure films, right? Because when you break the rules of how films are structured, you better have a damn good reason, and it better work out in a way that is not satisfied. That's not the right word, but that there needs to be more than just a little bit of thought behind why you're doing something like that. And like breaking, not even just conventions or stylistic conventions or anything like that, but just like breaking rules in ways that might be considered problematic. The Force Awakens sets up Snoke as the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
Except for that Snoke is actually even more powerful than the Emperor. Now this, to be fair, what I'm about to say isn't part of the movies. It's in the canon. It's part of the story, but it's not in the movies. Is that you find out through the books and stuff and the comics that Snoke is actually, and through Battlefront 2 actually, that Snoke is this thing, this source of power that existed in the uncharted reaches of space, and Palpatine's last order before he dies is to like go out and upon his death to like go out and seek this entity that he's been in some form of contact with or knows about. And this is Snoke. So that's not part of the movie, so we can forgive that as kind of a thing. But it does set up Snoke.
That being could enter another host, maybe.
Okay, but then we're getting into something else.
Okay.
Hang on. We'll get there. So, you know, he in the Force Awakens, he is set up as like the Emperor character. He is Kylo Ren's master. He has been around. We're told, I don't think directly in the movie, but by the production around the movie and in material that was released around the movie about the movie, and it might even be in the novelization that he's been around since he might even say he's seen the rise and fall of the Republic and the Empire.
Wow.
So he was around from the time of the Republic, and he knows about that stuff. Okay, so we're talking about an old, like a really old, like if it wasn't apparent from looking at him. So he's really old. He's super powerful, potentially more powerful than Palpatine. That's the character that was set up. Now, if you want to get rid of that character, if you want to subvert expectations and you want to kill that character, there needs to be a damn good reason. Because for one thing, that character leaves a vacuum. For two reasons. One, as a character, right? Kylo Ren's master figure is gone. So he needs to be capable enough to fill that role himself and become the master. Which is difficult because no time has gone by between the end of Force Awakens and the beginning of The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Seems like at most a day has gone by. At very most. But probably less than that. So it's not like he went back and he trained and this is all very fresh. Like The Force Awakens just happens, which means that from the time that we're introduced to Snoke to the time that Snoke dies is like, if we're being generous, maybe a week.
Yeah.
Of time in universe. The other issue is the issue that Snoke brings up about power, right? That the reason that Rey is so powerful is because Kylo is so powerful. Snoke is balanced off by Luke, which means that Snoke must be as powerful as Luke, or around that power level. Like, are we talking about power levels now? And this is kind of like a weird issue with the way that they've reworked the Force in these movies. Because, like we said, they're superpowers. You don't need training necessarily anymore, except that Snoke says that Kylo Ren's training isn't done, and Luke is refusing to train Rey. So training is sort of important, but not by the end of the movie.
My sense of that is that Rey is particularly gifted.
But there's a difference between gifted. Like, Luke was always gifted also, but he had to learn how to do what he does with the Force. Kylo had to learn to do what he does with the Force. Rey,
but that's what I mean. Like, Rey is a cut above. There's also just the thing of, like, I think I said this before on a previous Star Wars thing that we've done, but it's called The Force Awakens. Like, the Force is within her anyway. I know it's within everyone, but like, this training comes so naturally to her that that all it must do is awaken. It doesn't need to be nurtured or like provoked or prodded until it becomes something. It's already there, and I know that that's problematic in the canon and everything like that, but that's how I've excused it, and that's how I've
that's one of those things
think
that's
that
excusable.
She is like an actual goddess, and I love her. So
I like the character of Rey. I wish they hadn't cast her as Luke's mother figure in this movie, but because that's demeaning to what she could be and what she is supposed to be in the movie. Like, she's this all-powerful person. It's like she only exists, like Rey only exists to kind of like serve the characters around her and build them back up again.
Yeah.
Hopefully the next movie changes that, but like unfortunately that's the role that she's been kind of cast in. But so Snoke dies. Kylo, in this theory, like, that's how he becomes more powerful, is that he can't gain any more power until Snoke's gone. Is that how it works? I don't know. It doesn't really there's a vacuum that's left with, like, it almost doesn't matter, because there's the point is that there's a vacuum that's left when Snoke dies, when he kills Snoke. That if you're going to kill off a character who's supposed to be that powerful, that good, the character who kills him has to be capable or catch him really off guard. And B, that character, now there's no big bad in Star Wars right now. At the end of the movie, Kylo, is he the big bad?
See, that's what I like.
Is there still good in him? Is there any, like, Luke gives up on him completely. Rey at the very end seems to give up on him completely when they have their vision connection, which Snoke isn't around to do anymore. So how are they doing that unless Snoke isn't dead? Like, it's kind of problematic. Like, Snoke sets up that he actually created the connection between them. Does that connection permanent?
Yeah, it could very well be that, or else
does he need to be around to do it, or
it could be that with him gone, and there's an elevation in the balance of power, that it stands on its own now, and that the two of them. See, you're dealing with a nebulous concept that has been vaguely described at best in every single movie that comes before it, apart from the midichlorian like nonsense. But I think, like you say, that's been dismissed. But you're kind of dealing with a religiosity, and it's really, really hard to pin that down to anything. So it definitely makes me willing to excuse like all of that stuff as just it's the Force, because like this is the one instance where you can truly just say, yeah, it's the Force. Like it's some obviously Rey is immensely powerful,
and that's fine.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that I don't think Kylo is set up as a capable villain
but
by the end of it.
I
think he's unstable and sympathetic, but not in the way that like a villain is. So if he's not like a villain really, then who is the villain? He's not. The end of this movie, when he stops the assault on the rebel base for everyone to shoot at Luke, and he throws his little temper, because he had started to actually become like, this movie, the writing for Kylo up until this point where he kills Snoke is way stronger than the first movie, than Force Awakens. Like, I start to believe that Kylo is a more capable, more threatening villain in this movie. But then he has that moment of just like baby tantrum, fire everything at his uncle, and then his uncle is still there, and the way his mannerisms in the fight scene don't seem dangerous or threatening, they seem petulant. Like, he's not a threatening character. Like, I don't feel like he's a threatening character, and you know that Rey isn't going to die at the end of this. So either Kylo turns or he dies. And either way, like, I don't find it like I don't think he's going to kill Finn. He already slashed Finn up the back, and Finn got up the next movie, which again is like, how fast is that back to work? Because this is only like a day later. Yeah, true. But like, I feel like that void is problematic. Like, I think if you're going to kill off Snoke, then I don't necessarily think that if this movie had taken place, you know, way later, like some time after Snoke, after the events of Force Awakens, right? We join Rey on Ahch-To. Her and Luke, like, you can have it in flashback or in a montage of everything that happened in the time in between, where like he refuses to train her or anything like that. You can build you keep that in some way, right? Or you don't have to. You just get across the message that she has been waiting and living on this planet, and you're like, oh, okay, she's training with Luke, and she comes out and she just like sits and waits for him, and he comes out and he says, "You're still here? I thought I told you to go away."
That's true. It's like the that's actually a very good point. I think that the plot, sorry, the timing or the setting in the sense of time in the plot kind of is a trade-off between how long it's been since you saw The Force Awakens and how long it's been since the movie saw The Force Awakens. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. It knows that it's been a long time for you, and it kind of builds that into the movie where it's only been a day, and that's definitely a problem. And if you were to watch the two movies back to back for the first time ever, that would be just a huge issue for you, I think.
we've come back and it's been a year since Rey has been on this island, unable to reach Luke, unable to get him to train her.
2 years.
But maybe even 2 years, whatever it's been that she's been on this planet with Luke, just waiting for him to teach something to her. And she's so stubborn about the need for Luke to be in the fight again and to train her and to get her to understand what's happening that she refuses to leave, right? They show her moving around that lightsaber and not a single person goes like, freaking Mary Sue, like how did she learn how to use that? She has no training. She's been practicing on this island by herself for 2 years because this asshole won't train her. So she's been teaching herself.
Yeah, that would be a lot better.
I don't know. It just simple solutions. I'm not a writer, but these are things that I feel like would have made it more believable, like would have made it more accessible, would have treated us less like idiots.
Do you want to know the biggest problem with the movie in total?
What?
What are those little Furby fucking things?
Porgs?
The porg, right? So, so a porg looks distressingly at Chewbacca as he attempts to eat one of their own, and seemingly overwhelmed with guilt, Chewbacca decides not to, right?
But he's already killed it and cooked it.
He's already fucking killed it and skinned it. And
people are starving.
And he won't eat it because, like, listen, I love pigs. I look at pigs, okay? But if there's a pig looking at me and I have a cooked bacon rasher in my hand, the fucking thing is getting eaten. I might even share some of it with the pig. Like, there's no part of me is going to look at the pig and say, oh, I'm not eating this delicious, sizzling piece of bacon fresh off the pan.
Yeah.
And I'm not even a giant, hairy, idiot dog. And Chewbacca is. So, it's just that's so stupid.
So I don't know. I just think that, like, if you're going to... My problem isn't with that they killed Snoke. My problem is that for Kylo to have killed Snoke, he should have been in a different place emotionally, and like he should have had time to evolve as a character, even if it happened off screen with us not seeing it, so that when he comes back in The Last Jedi, he's different. That the change makes sense, that he's grown in some way that we haven't necessarily seen, and that we appreciate the idea that, like, no, okay, some shit's happened now. He's been going after the rebels. They've been trying to figure out where the rebel base is or whatever, if you want to have the same nonsensical, stupid plot of the movie. They can't find it. You know, it wasn't tracked or traced immediately like it apparently was. He's been in battle. He's done a bunch of stuff, you know, like, well, maybe you want to throw the Knights of Ren in there or something like that. Like that's a whole other thing.
So I can see where you're going there, and that I think I would think that if it were another franchise or another movie, but I mean, we're almost 9 movies into this now, and I really think that it's good that we're moving away from the idea that there has to be one huge bad villain. I think it's really interesting to be heading into episode 9 where we don't really know what's happening, and we have this unhinged man who's half good, half bad, whose intentions are, like...
I wouldn't say half good.
Okay, that was bad. Okay. 1/5 good or 1/8 good. But anyway, like there is good in him somewhere. But it's more like good that comes out as a result of bad. Like, it's really, really interesting. And it's one of the few things kind of holding the story together. Like, it's really obvious that there are 2 different directors and 2 different teams. Like, it's really obvious that these are 2 completely different movies. And Kylo Ren is one of the things that holds it together in a really interesting way. And I think we don't need to see a fully formed version of him. I think it's really interesting.
I'm not even arguing for a fully formed version. I'm asking for a more competent and emotionally more not even stable, because part of the interesting thing about him is that he's disturbed.
Completely, yeah.
But just, like, have him in a point where it's believable that he's able to take that power for himself. Because...
Well,
like him just being like a whiny brat and just killing Snoke. Like, let's get beyond the fact of like the stupidness of how Snoke dies, because at the same time that it was cool, it was also very dumb. He's giving an evil bad guy speech that goes on way too long, and as he's doing it, a lightsaber rattles on a seemingly glass, plastic, whatever surface next to him, spins, and slices him in half.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, isn't his, like, fine. That's how it happens, but like, it's dumb that it happens that way, because this super powerful being should have been able to figure out what was going on, unless that's what they wanted to happen.
So I think it's like the arrogance of him that he relies only on his Jedi or his Sith Lord senses there, and like, you know, he's like, oh, I can sense the lightsaber about to, you know, like that's kind of the only way you can do it, because no one's getting a clear shot at this guy in a fair fight, because he's a fucking animal, like he's a machine. I thought it was pretty neat. I thought it was different. It was just a way of using the Force that we haven't seen properly before, like someone actually turning the lightsaber on in midair. Like, that was cool.
But this is where you establish at some point that Kylo Ren can use the Force to manipulate what people think. Right? This is where you have Rey try to read him while they're having those conversations, and he manipulates her using the Force. Like, not even a mind trick. We're talking about something completely different, where like you establish that that when this happens, I don't need someone to explain to me. I can understand that Kylo Ren is able to use the Force in a way that Snoke sees the lightsaber, but he believes that it's Kylo is so good at this one particular thing that he's able, and you establish this in episode 7. Like, this goes all the way back, man. Like, there's issues. But if this is something that he's able to do, then like, what? There's no. We're talking about a movie. Here's the thing: is there's lots of things. I've said here's the thing a million times, and this is my point. And there's lots of things, and there's lots of points. Get over it. Is that I told, like I said, I'm fine with Snoke dying. I'm even fine with Snoke dying the way that he died. Okay? Like, that's not the bigger problem. I do feel like there's a weird bit of a power vacuum. I don't know what they're going to do. I guarantee you that no matter what J.J. Abrams does in the next movie, it's not going to be satisfying. Because while this is interesting, while it literally leaves the franchise in a point where it could go in any direction, I don't think it's going to go in a good direction.
I feel like
even if it's a better movie, I don't think that there's a way to resolve, like, narrative structures exist the way they do for a reason. And they haven't changed much for thousands of years for a reason. And it's not that there's no original stories or anything like that, or that you can't still surprise people or include plot twists or things like that. But like, killing off Snoke and leaving Kylo Ren as the bad guy, this series can only end a few certain ways, and I don't necessarily think that it's going to be emotionally satisfying for audiences. I just don't. And like, I'd be very surprised if it is, because The Force Awakens got by mostly on the not being as shitty as the prequels and nostalgia.
That's true, yeah.
It's not because it was a great movie. We said this before. Like I said, I enjoyed The Force Awakens. I don't think it's a good movie. I enjoyed it, though. I had a lot of fun with it. Fun that I didn't necessarily have with The Last Jedi. At least not consistently.
I think with the next one, it's not going to be satisfying, and I think that's because of J.J. Abrams. I think he doesn't take risks. It's going to be a fairly vanilla good versus evil thing. It's going to take over where General Hux is going to be ruling the galaxy, and Kylo Ren will be this kind of unhinged man who's not sure if he wants total control or not, or like, I don't know. But it is going to be bland, and it is going to end with Rey being the queen of the universe, where it should end with like Rey sacrificing herself to bring out the last bit of good in Kylo Ren, or something like that should happen, but it won't.
But they can't. They can't for the same reason that everybody's pissed about the episode of Star Trek that just came out.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, okay.
But,
Well, I'm just saying they have a minority character, like not a minority, but like they have a female lead who is a powerful Jedi now, because apparently she's a Jedi, because all it takes is Luke Skywalker saying that she's a Jedi for her to be a Jedi. They're not going to kill her.
no,
They're just not going to do it. It's like it doesn't matter who the director is. They are not killing Rey. Rey is completely safe. And I would say Finn is probably safe too, because they had the opportunity to do that in this movie, and Kelly Marie Tran was like, "No, we're keeping all the minorities in this film." Like,
I 100% thought he was going to die.
I'm 100% joking about that, by the way. That's not the problem with that scene. But that's the thing, is like none of these. The only character who might die is Poe.
I would be happy with that.
And sadly I would too, because his writing has just not been good.
Yeah.
And I'm sad, because once again, a really good actor being used really poorly.
There's a gravesite out there dying to cry out, "I've got company."
Yeah. No. Okay.
I fucking hate that.
Every time another Resistance pilot dies.
Yeah.
I've got company.
But that line itself is a ridiculous action movie cliche that doesn't even. "We've got company." Like, fuck off.
Is that his catchphrase?
Yeah.
I think the Poe doll from The Force Awakens, if you squeeze his hand or whatever, goes, "We've got company." I'm not kidding. Like,
oh my god, are you seriously not kidding?
If that's true, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna send it to you. It's gonna be my ringtone.
I will burn it, and I will film myself burning it.
You've got company.
Oh, it's yeah.
Talk first. I talk first.
I can't hear you.
I'm holding for
apparatus.
Hux.
I'm holding for. Right? Can you imagine? Can you imagine Han Solo calling Jabba's palace and being like, "Oh, I'm holding for one of the huts. I owe some money." And then it's just, man, I hate.
Dumb.
I even have a problem with Finn saying that's one hell of a pilot, because to say one hell of implies that the word hell exists. You know what I mean? Like I don't, like at that point it's just me being the problem, but the holding thing, like, there are no phones.
Also, we didn't need you to say that, Finn. Like, we got that from watching it. Like,
yeah.
We get that. You just have to say woo. We get that you're into it.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, that actually just reminded me of a point. That, like, when we're talking about we're talking about a movie, The Last Jedi, that literally has a scene where it's the most unnecessary thing I've ever seen in a movie, I think. Luke is out on the island. They're on the island because Luke never leaves the island. And he's out on that, by where that meditation rock is, and Rey comes up behind him and is like, "Kylo Ren is strong in the dark side, and that's why we need you to come back." I think that's almost exactly her line. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's almost exactly what she says. And I remember seeing this scene and her coming out to Luke, and I'm like, what is she going to say? She says that, I'm like, that's freaking stupid. Like, we just have a scene where the good guy is telling the other good guy who's reluctant, "There is a very bad and mean wizard, and we must defeat it. We need the good wizard, who is you, Luke Skywalker, from episodes 4 through 7, the end of 7, to come and help us in this new episode 8, directed by Rian Johnson." Like, how much unnecessary shit information does she need to say? So this is the movie where they're like, this is how little they think of the audience, that they have to spell out shit like that, but they don't think that they have to explain other things in the movie that, like, this is going back to what I was saying about Kylo Ren with his Force abilities and stuff like that. They can just do shit like that. Kylo Ren kills Snoke. There's no kind of dialogue or hint or clue, even if it's visual, not verbal, that something more is happening other than like the lightsaber. Like we know what's going on,
No,
right?
in defense of the Snoke thing, though, I think it's important that he delivers that dialogue because he clearly is sensing Kylo Ren about to strike down his enemy. He just hasn't realized that his enemy is him. So,
I agree, and this is a dumb hill for me to die on, so I'm not going to. Like I think there's not. I like I said before, I don't have necessarily a problem with Snoke dying. I think the way he dies is kind of clumsy. It's not. It wasn't handled. I think the best way that it could have been more artfully done. Same thing, same scene, more artfully done. I think it would have been nice to set up Kylo's ability to manipulate people through the Force before that. At some point,
but he's not really doing a whole lot of manipulation there. Like it's for all intents and purposes, Snoke is commentating on exactly what is happening. You know what I mean?
I know. I just feel like it would have been more believable. Like why? I don't know. This is like I said. This is extreme. Out of all my arguments, this is extremely nitpicky. This isn't a reason that I don't like the movie, by the way. This is just something that I'm being nitpicky about because we're having a really good discussion about this. This is not a reason that I don't like the movie. I'm fine with Snoke dying. I'm actually fine even with the Luke Skywalker stuff. If we want to get into. A lot of people have a problem with this. This is the side of me that like. Me as a Star Wars fan, I have a massive problem with the way they handled Luke in this movie. I don't think it makes sense. I think you can keep the thing of failure and redemption, that theme, without Luke completely being a different character. The same guy who felt a shred of good in a father who he never knew and goes on a suicide mission to save him. There's that suicide again. To save him. Just on the chance that good could be kindled into... like helping him defeat the Emperor or saving his friends or being at the very least being a distraction on the Death Star while the stuff is happening on Endor to actually blow up the Death Star. Because that's really what the plan is when you come down to it.
Yeah,
he just feels a shred of good in him. Is the same guy who feels a shred of good in his nephew and has a moment of that is he's so weak in this moment that he actually ignites his lightsaber over his sleeping nephew to kill him. Yeah. And then the moment passes. It's not in keeping with the character. And
well, I would say there's a parallel to be had there with Yoda. That's actually quite interesting, right? So when Yoda is faced with 5-year-old Anakin, or it's obviously not 5, however the fuck old Jake Lloyd is in that movie. And he's like, no, you can't be trained, you're too old. And Yoda is he's wise, he's chivalrous.
Ship.
He does have a record high midichlorian count. Yes, but he's too old.
No, because he did the ship cup thing pretty good.
But anyway, so like there's that Yoda, and he turns up in Attack of the Clones. He turns up at the end to fight Count Dooku and all that's or not Count. Count Dooku, yeah. And all of that stuff is going on, and that's great. And then in the next trilogy, he's this sad old hermit who's really weird, does lots of things for comedic benefit for the viewer, and is not really painted in the light of a serious sort of Jedi warrior type. And he trains Luke himself. Despite saying that Anakin was too old for training, he trains Luke himself when Luke is like 29 or something. Yep. He's not 29. I think he's like 21 or something. But anyway, so with Luke, it's sort of the opposite way in that he actually decides to he finds the good in his father, but he sees the bad in Ben Solo, and it sends him into a weird moment of weakness, which you could say might be amplified by the fact that Luke has just a lot riding on his shoulders, as not to name the movie, but The Last Jedi, as it were, and things like that. And then obviously the way that he behaves on the island is a result of him being aloof and out of the world for so long. And
I've got no problem with how he behaves on the island.
Oh, cool, yeah, because a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And
that stuff is fine. I like the idea of like him not wanting to train Rey.
Yeah.
I wish in this movie where we get a line that is, there is a very mean and bad wizard out there, and we need your help. In this movie directed by Rian Johnson.
This movie written by Steve Yedlin.
I have an issue that like in this movie that has this dumb line in it that feels that they feel the need to explain that they don't go into more of like what Luke's problem with the Jedi Order is, because he says he learned all this shit, and then he has like 2 offhand lines to Rey about like the arrogance of the Jedi, but he never really goes into it at all. And this is like again another kind of symptom of a greater problem that's happening in Hollywood, and you can see it with the Marvel movies, I guess also, is that they are ditching dialogue for more action sequences. If you watch Empire Strikes Back, universally by Star Wars fans of almost any age, the best Star Wars film, because it's actually like beyond being it's more than just a good Star Wars film. It's actually like a good film.
Yeah, it's great.
It's kind of like how The Dark Knight isn't just like a good superhero movie or a good Batman movie. It's actually kind of like a good like crime drama.
Yeah.
Like it transcends like its own genre limitations to be kind of like, okay, that works. It's like simple and elegant, something that this movie is not. But it's not about comparing the two in that way. It's just that I don't know. I lost words.
I'll tag on to that for a moment, because one of the things that I resent the most that's happening in Hollywood at the moment is this idea of winking at the camera in every scene. So that
action.
You can, Chris Pratt does it like all the time in every fucking movie that he's in. Like there's a scene in I think it's Age of Ultron where the bow and arrow guy, Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner, he's like, oh, well, there's aliens running around outside from a distant planet, and I've got a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense. It's like, you might as well just look into the camera and tell the audience to suck your dick. And like,
there is a lot of that in this movie too.
Yeah, I think Rey actually says laser sword at one point, and it just completely belittles that. Like, you don't need to point this out to us.
No, and like the whole movie is a metaphor. Like the entire movie is a metaphor for what's happening with the franchise.
Yeah.
That's what this movie is about. This movie isn't about anything to do with what's happening inside the universe of Star Wars. This movie is everything to do about what's happening outside of the universe of Star Wars and in the universe of like the franchise, what Disney's doing with it. Because the message of this movie is let the past die, kill it if you have to. Those are Kylo Ren's words. That is what this movie is.
Yeah,
it's about letting go of what you think original Star Wars is about. This is what Disney Star Wars is about now. And if you're not on board with that, like, there's going to be, guess what? Millions and like billions of people who this is going to be the only Star Wars that they know or give a shit about because they're growing up with it. And they don't necessarily have the same connection with the originals. And that's sad. That's just what it is. It's let the past die, kill it if you have to. Rian Johnson's killing it. And I hate that everybody's saying like it's so clear that he loves Star Wars so much. I don't think it is. I really don't think it is. Unless you're trying to tell me that he loves Star Wars so much that he realizes that Disney's just going to screw it up anyway, so he's killing it for them by just cutting off the head so that we don't have to deal with it for the next 20 years. That's what this entire film, like so much of the dialogue is referencing the fact that this is the way that things are now. It is that winking of the camera, this is the message of the movie. It has nothing to do with Siths or Jedis or good or evil or anything like that. It's we're taking Star Wars in a new direction, and this is our movie where we're telling you we're doing that over and over and over again.
Well, if you listen to conservative commentators, the message of this movie is in fact that women deserve the right to vote. I don't fucking know, whatever.
It's actually going into that, like we were talking about this a bit before, the Kelly Marie Tran thing. Yeah. Because I feel so bad for her because of the vitriol that is happening online about her as an actress. I don't like Rose Tico. I think she's a shitty character. I don't think she really serves a purpose in this film.
I think if you could ever point to a token minority existing in a movie, she is it.
I don't dislike her because she's a minority character, and I think minority, like, that has nothing. I really desperately want strong, like, I'm a minority. Like, listen to my name. Does that sound English to you?
What do you mean, Santiago?
So Santiago, it's like, here's the thing. It's like, I really desperate, like, when Diego Luna was in Star Wars, I wasn't expecting to feel kind of like, oh shit, like, I didn't realize this mattered to me. But like, seeing a character in there with a Spanish accent felt kind of awesome for me. So like, I get it, and like, I'm like, I don't want to take the role of the like minority person or anything like that and be like, oh, I know what it feels like, and so therefore, like, that's not what this is at all. I really, just as a fan, think that diversity benefits the Star Wars universe. Like, it's dumb to see only white people in movies when I am living in Toronto and I look outside the window and I see maybe like one white person and everybody else is all sorts of different colors and mixed, and you know, like, that's just the way that things are. That's the reality of the new globalized world, right? Like, I think you need that. You need to have, especially like with the a couple of Oscars ago with the Oscars So White, and it was all about getting, you know, like, there are no black actors nominated, there are no black directors nominated, there are no black writers nominated, kind of thing. And there was a very small but subtle outcry of like, what about Asian actors? And it's true. It's totally true. The Asian people, like, from any part of Asia, so this is a gross overgeneralization, but any part of Asia, grossly underrepresented in Hollywood. And like, I don't think, in the same way that people argue like, well, it doesn't have, like, it just needs to be a good character, it doesn't need to be minority. I would say, like, if it's a good character, it doesn't matter whether they're white or male. Write a good character, and that's where Rose Tico fails. She is not a good character.
She's not even the best Asian female character in the movie, because her sister is like 100 times better.
Way cooler.
Yeah.
She actually, like, you know what the dumb part is that she saves Finn from doing what her sister did so that she could live.
Yeah.
I only thought about that right now when you mentioned it.
That's so true,
that's
yeah.
literally what she does. So, like, is it that she's saving her sister, but really she's saving Finn, but, like, in her head she's saving her sister?
No, because she goes on to kiss him, so it's probably
Yeah, this isn't Game of Thrones, you're right. It's like a huge problem that I have, because I wanted so desperately to like the character, because I think she seemed really funny. When I listened to her on the panels, she seemed she is extremely likable.
She's lovely, yeah. She's really, really like she's just like this warm, honest person who, like, I really want her to
be there. I want her to succeed. And the thing is, like, I can't even tell you whether or not she's a good actor, or if she struggled because she's not a good actor. Like, I can't tell you that, honestly, because her dialogue, like, I feel so bad for her. Her dialogue was the worst writing in the entire film.
Yeah.
It seems like it was written on set. Like, the scene when well, we talked about Canto Bight very, very briefly, like, they're on the planet, and her anger about it, all her lines about why she doesn't like Canto Bight, it's all I could keep hearing in my head was like, I hate sand.
I was hoping that someone was going to quote that line in this episode.
The level of writing for her character.
I know, it was the most generic thing. Like, it was as if they had just asked like a university, you know, the university SJWs that get derided for not having real opinions, but really just having senses of what's going on. It's like asking one of them, like, why is Israel bad? And their response would be, oh, they just do stuff that's bad for the little guy. Like, that's pretty much what she said there. Like, it was, you know what I mean? It just... so she comes from a planet where her people were subjugated by like the rich people who are kind of like profiting off of the
off of the First Order existing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's her story. That's her backstory. Fine, awesome. I actually think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Handled poorly, but okay, that's her backstory. They're on this casino planet filled with those people, so she's obviously upset. Okay, makes sense. Handled poorly, again, poorly written. They encounter slave children, okay, who are in charge of, I guess, taking care of these horses or horse dog things or whatever.
Fucking animals.
Never have I heard the sound when they were in the casino and they turn and they hear that sound and the rumbling, and I'm like, oh my god, don't tell me. And then like they show the track and I'm like, no, pod racing. And then it was
I
like,
swear
I'm
I
like,
had the exact
never
same.
have I been so sad that it wasn't pod racing, because pod racing would have been way better than these dumb horses.
It would have been cool for them to agree that pod racing exists. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
it would have made sense because it's pitting the poor against each other, and
The slave children could have been driving the pods.
yeah, absolutely. Like, it would have made. That's literally what Anakin was doing.
Yep.
But no,
Nope.
it was
Dumb.
weird.
Anyway, there are these slave children with these dumb horse things.
Yeah.
With like full donkey faces.
All the animals in this movie were terrible.
I don't mind the animals existing. It's the starring, like the amount of screen time that they got. I was like, nothing got that screen time in the originals.
Those
Yeah.
horse things looked like they were procedurally generated after 4.5 hours of No Man's Sky.
They did look like something from No Man's
They
Sky.
even moved like they were those creatures from No Man's Sky. Nothing about them looked natural or anything.
They escape on these things. The slave children helped them. They escape. The slave children don't. They run away and like they get away from the dumb police forces or whatever. Which, by the way, we're gonna get to Phasma later, and I'm gonna come back to this point. But why wasn't it Phasma that went after them? At least it would have given her something to do. We'll get back to Phasma later, though. We'll talk about Phasma because I've got thoughts. I don't have thoughts. I have opinions.
Yeah.
But anyway, they escape and, Finn is standing there with her and they see all the other horses kind of like running away. And the police are chasing the horse things. So like, whatever. And they're like, oh, they got away. And Finn's like, it was worth it. Or like he asks, was it worth it? Or he says it was worth it or something. And she goes and she takes the saddle off the horse thing that they had and frees it. She goes, now it was worth it. Those slave children are still slaves. You set horses free that are going to be caught in 5 hours and returned to the racetracks where they will be beaten for having run away.
It's also,
and the children.
like, even
and you're saying now it was worth it.
the horses are like sentient beings who understand that they're being held captive. This is the fucking annoying thing about Star Wars, is nothing can just be a thing. Droids have to be sentient and filled with emotions. Horses have to have morality and ethics. Like, it's just nothing can just fucking exist. Like nothing can just be a thing independent of human emotion.
The horses actually couldn't leave because there was a blockade from the Horse Trade Federation.
But it's so like I don't know. Everything is a dog in the Star Wars universe. There's humans and dogs, and the dogs are represented by either droids or horses or fucking those stupid Porg Snorlax things. It's just it's frustrating.
Porgs actually didn't bother me until they started being completely. The one in the cockpit was the one that really annoyed the hell out. I was even fine with the like Chewbacca moment. I was like, okay, I'll give that to you because it was kind of like whatever. But the whole stupid like one in the cockpit like flying around and getting stuck to the glass on the side of, like, there's a gif of it now that you can find. It was like so, like, that's the kind of prequel shit. That and like BB-8 stealing the walker were like two scenes where I was like, give me a freaking break. Like, just like the comedy, like, there's pacing issues in the movie. plot wise. That we've talked about some of them. There's timeline issues, which I think I'm right about, but that's up for debate. But like the comedy in this movie is so hit or miss, because some of the jokes land and they're like, okay, that was really funny. Like, this is good comic relief. And there's other things where it's like, there was no, like, I understand that this is a heavy moment, but allow it to be a heavy moment and then let it wash over us and then introduce a moment of levity afterwards.
Yeah.
Don't break up the tension with a moment of comedy, like right as in the middle of us feeling things. Right? Like that whole scene with like BB-8 taking control of the walker was terrible. Because like at first I was like, it's DJ.
I'm glad it wasn't DJ, but
I'm
thought
glad
it
it
might have
wasn't.
been Ray.
I'm glad it wasn't DJ, but at the same time, or like it's other stormtroopers who have gone against their programming or whatever. Like, I don't know.
I thought it
like,
was going to be Ray because she's on the ship. Like,
yeah, it would have made a lot more sense that she meets up with them and gets out of there with them.
Yeah.
Than her just magically appearing on the Millennium Falcon. Like, how did she get back out to the Millennium Falcon?
I know, yeah.
Because everybody's like, oh, they say that Snoke's shuttle is still there, so she clearly took Snoke's shuttle. But if she took Snoke's shuttle, then what did the other group get out on?
Yeah.
Somebody got out of there some weird way. Like, it doesn't make sense. But, So I feel bad for Rose. Carrying on that thread, I feel really bad for Gwendolyn Christie. Like,
yeah,
they promised, they said that Phasma was going to get a more important role, a more prominent role in this film, and she didn't. Why? She has that thing with Finn where she just like hates him. Why didn't she go AWOL to go after Finn when they went like? How hard would it have been for her to, see the ship escaping and go after it, and then once they're on, Canto Bight, she sees that it's Finn and she goes berserk and she goes on like hunting mode, like they're hunting FN 2187.
It's cool the way the Star Wars universe has two of the most marketable characters ever in Boba Fett and Captain Phasma, and they're both fucking terrible at their job, and they both get a combined total of about 11 minutes screen time.
But Boba Fett at least Boba Fett in Empire Strikes Back is a badass. He's not on screen that often. All you get is that line from Darth Vader that's no disintegrations, which implies that he's disintegrated people before, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then he's the one who ends up taking Han Solo at the end. And he's like, no, I'm taking Han. I'm the bounty hunter who succeeded. He was also the one who had the same idea as Han Solo about escaping with the garbage chute, but because he knew that that's what Han Solo would do. So this is the thing about like the rebels being clever. The rebels get away from the Imperials in the asteroid field because Han Solo is clever, and they go out with the garbage.
Yeah.
But Boba Fett is more clever because he was there waiting for them already, because he knew that that's what a clever person would do. That's why Boba Fett's cool. Return of the Jedi Boba Fett, not cool.
No.
Return of the Jedi Boba Fett is Captain
Bad.
Phasma, it's Jedi,
Yeah.
Force Awakens. Like, it's just so sad. Like, and the thing is, there was an interview with him on IGN where he was talking about why Phasma didn't get that much of a role, and he was just like, there are so many characters, and some of them there just wasn't enough screen time to do something with them. I'm like, you introduced Rose Tico and a bunch of other characters that people didn't like have enough time to even get invested in the middle chapter of a trilogy, and then like on top of that, like, I have your solution for Phasma right here. She goes after like the pod that escapes. Like, they see it. The Empire sees it and they're like, oh, like, or whatever, and like Phasma's like, I'll deal with it. Like, figure it out in the writing room.
Yeah, that would actually be
Phasma
way
goes
better.
after them because Finn was with them. So if she had seen Finn on Canto Bight, it would have changed that. Like, Canto Bight would have been way more tense if you knew that Phasma like saw Finn, saw that it was Finn, and was like going after him.
Yeah.
DJ.
So I have like 10 minutes left.
Oh my god.
So, yeah, DJ was... Oh man, I don't even fucking know anymore.
You know what DJ stands for?
Dumb jock. No.
Nope. DJ is the name they gave him because it's his slogan. Don't join. The words he says to Finn as he leaves. And apparently, like, on his, like, hat thing or whatever the hell he had, it's, like, written in Arabic. Don't join.
I could have gone without knowing that.
Yep.
Like,
That's this movie.
Benicio del Toro is awesome.
He's a badass.
Mm.
This movie. Oh, what, like, that could have been anybody. Like, why do you go and get Benicio del Toro if that's what you're gonna do?
So I love the idea of having a character who does not subscribe to either good or bad. Like, that's cool. I'm totally down for that. He has a good side in that he gives the coin thing, or that penchant thing, whatever it is, back to Rose, and then he has a bad side in that he literally takes the money and fucks off. And, like, that's cool, that's great, but it's just it does nothing. There's no lesson, there's no anything. It's just he's just there and then he's gone and nothing happens.
It doesn't serve the plot in any way, except for that, like, he's apparently the reason that, like, Finn told him at some point where what the plan was that he didn't know about.
Yeah. Because
they know about the rebel ships leaving to go to Crate because of DJ.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he tells them that.
When did he find that out?
Yeah.
From who did he find that out? Because it sure as hell wasn't from Finn, because Finn didn't know that part of the plan.
Oh, shit. Did Finn not know that?
No, of course he didn't. He went to Crate because they didn't know there was a plan. Or, sorry, he went to Canto Bight because he didn't know there was a plan. The whole reason he goes to Canto Bight is because he's not privy to that part of the plan.
Shit. No, there must be some way.
Surely they wouldn't create a movie where a ship is running away from another ship.
Does he not overhear it on the... No, because they don't... I know they have dialogue on the intercom thing. He doesn't learn it then by any chance, does he?
He might, but, like, then, like, how... Like, all they would know is that there were ships escaping. Yeah. So, like, what, they just weren't looking in that direction?
This is bad.
How are these ships hidden until Benicio del Toro tells them where they are? It doesn't matter. Like, it's not like they gave out the cloaking frequency or, like, whatever over the comm. So those ships were visible the entire time. They were just, like, not looking in that direction.
Well, Benicio del Toro, if Sicario has taught you anything, he is good with that kind of thing. He's good with logistics. He's a good spy. So
yeah. The timeline stuff that I was talking about is at one point, I think it's just before Finn and Rose leave, somebody, for some reason, the question of how much fuel they have left gets asked, and I'm almost 100% sure, this is the part that I'm not sure of, I'm almost 100% sure that either Poe says it or somebody says it to Poe. I'm almost 100% sure that somebody says 18 hours. 18 hours of fuel left. It's at a point where, like, I think some ships have already blown up. I think it's just before just before Finn and Rose leave.
I can't remember because, as you can imagine, I was too angry. I was too busy getting angry at the fact that they have hours in the Star Wars universe.
I'm pretty sure somebody said 18 hours. If that's the case, and I'm not 100% sure, so this point might not, I'm not going to elaborate on it too much because I might be wrong. If that's the case, then there's a huge timeline issue because Rey spends multiple days on Act 2.
So...
She's there at least 2 days.
Have
minimum.
You seen the movie Interstellar? Maybe just, a few days on that. Few days on that planet means a few hours on another planet.
My willing suspension of disbelief is up here. we're breaking glass. We're breaking some sort of ceiling. I don't know if it's glass ceilings, but we're breaking some sort of ceiling. Like, there's problems. The scene with Luke at the end, where he shows up as a force projection. I'm okay with the power. I'm okay with that power exists, that he's so powerful that he's able to do that. Would it have meant more if he was physically there? Yeah, but I get the idea that he doesn't die in combat, that he dies passively is important because he's using the force in a different way.
Yeah.
This is an argument that somebody made. I watched a video that I didn't agree with most of it, but I really liked this point that they made. Here's the thing. I've been watching a lot of really pro The Last Jedi stuff. Because if we had done this video when I came out of the movie theater, this podcast, it would have been a very different podcast. It would have just been me yelling about how I hate this movie. I walked out of the movie theater and I was like, I hate it. I really hate it. And I was so mad. When I messaged you about doing this and you were like, I have to go see it another time, I was mad that I couldn't vent. And now I'm not venting as much as I'm like, I feel like I've had time to think of some arguments, and I've listened to the other side to see what people are saying. This is a really good point. The fact that Luke doesn't die in combat, like it's like the opposite of Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is struck down in anger. Luke doesn't allow himself to be struck down. He has this moment of like peace and tranquility that he bought them time in a non-violent way.
Yeah.
Right. He didn't commit the same errors as the Jedi before him. He allowed them to escape. Right. Rey didn't certainly do anything violent when she was down on Crate. She didn't have to. She just needed to lift the rocks, which she'd never done before, and that was a lot of rocks. And Luke could barely lift a boulder, but whatever. So like I'm fine with that. The weird that is not Mark Hamill's body. That is Mark Hamill's face on somebody else's body. I refuse to believe that that's Mark Hamill's body. There's something off about that scene that looks very CG.
I tell you a cool thing about that scene is that Luke does not leave any red marks in the salt.
I did see that, yeah.
That
was
was really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was well done. That was very beautiful mind, the pigeons not flying away kind of thing.
I didn't actually notice that there was anything weird about his body, though.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a body double, and they CG'd in his face.
Possibly.
It's his face. He's acting that scene, but he's acting it with a suit in a different, in a green screen room or something.
I am going to go see it a third time, so...
Well, you tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, I will, yeah.
Him getting blown up with all the stuff, okay, sure. Him walking out and brushing off his shoulder, come on, that was so dumb. Way to kill a scene. That's not cool. It's not cool when it's not cool when anyone does that. That's not a cool thing to do.
I thought it was alright.
No, I thought that was dumb. That's more of that's not like a cinema gripe or anything.
No,
I just
that's
think
a
that was
personal
dumb.
preference.
I think that was just silly, an unnecessary silly. If he had just stood there or called Ben or whatever, or just looked at him, or I don't know, anything but that. That seemed very all that was missing was for him to take a combat stance and waggle his two fingers in a come here. Come at me.
Cypher does to Squall in the opening scene of Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah.
There's a fucking reference.
Exactly. That's what that was. It was an unnecessarily anime kind of bullshit.
It was, yeah, and I dug it. I thought it was fine at worst.
That whole scene at the the fight between, because Crate looks awesome except for that scene to me. It looks very CG to me. I don't buy that they're standing on the surface of a planet. It just doesn't look right. There's something about that scene that seems very off, and it's not that Luke is a force projection. There's something weird about it. The other thing about Crate, I'm just powering through some of these right now.
Yeah.
Because you got to go. Finn, about to sacrifice himself.
Yes.
Rose stops that sacrifice from happening, which is when the ram manages to break through the door and kill a bunch of rebels.
Most awkward kiss
resistance
ever?
Oh, absolutely. It was totally weird. And the line was really weird. She's like, I saved you, dummy. It's like, what? I don't. There's no chemistry established between these characters. Like, zero chemistry. And keep in mind that hours have gone by since they've known each other.
They truly have.
Or days, depending on which planet you're on.
Yeah.
What is going on? But so, like, no chemistry. They're terrible.
Yeah.
And the entire time, they are right in front of a line of First Order walkers.
Yeah, how have they not just been pummeled? Like, it's... Oh, that's so annoying.
They don't do it. They're just there. And okay, like, maybe they assume that they died in the crash, whatever. Or, like, maybe you can't see under the head of the thing when you are in the cockpit, because that actually kind of makes sense that they wouldn't be able to see them if they were right under them.
Yeah.
It's dumb, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
But then Finn manages, like, they're far away. Like, it took them how many minutes of screen time to fly in these ships, these speeders, out to where that front line of the First Order was.
About an hour and 35 minutes.
Finn carries her back in, like, record-setting time.
Yeah.
Like, he drags her back. It's really weird. And it's like, when she falls, you're like, did she just die? Is that how that character died? This is really dumb. And then he drags her back, so it's like, either he's planning on giving her a proper burial, or she's not dead. And either way, I'm not happy.
Yeah. I also thought that she was dead.
It like, and the way she, like, kisses him and then just, like, falls, it is terrible. That whole line, it's about saving the people you love, not destroying the things you hate, or something like that. I don't even give a shit. Like, it was so bad.
Yeah,
her dialogue is just terrible.
I don't think that the Resistance are trying to kill the First Order because they hate them. I don't think that's the dynamic that's going on there.
I know, it's stupid. Also, you know, like, Finn's journey, like, his whole journey as a character, he's not. The whole thing about Finn is that he's not a rebel. He's not part of the Resistance. He's definitely not part of the Resistance. He's always been in it for Rey. This is another point that pro Last Jedi video made online that I thought was really interesting, because there's a lot of people saying that his arc is the same in this movie as it was in the first movie. That in the first movie he runs away from the First Order, and then when the going gets tough with the Resistance, he runs away from the Resistance only to come back to help Rey, fulfilling his arc and allowing him to learn from his mistakes. That's not what happens in this movie. He's trying to run away at the beginning, not because he's deserting the Resistance, but because he has the transponder for Rey.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want Rey to come back to a massacre. That's why he's trying to run away. And he doesn't get the chance to explain that to Rose before she ruins the plot.
Yeah.
And the entire time that he's on Canto Bight, his whole thing is still about saving Rey and making sure that his friend is okay and that she doesn't come back to this massacre. Until he's on he finishes Canto Bight. Canto Bight's what starts to change his mind. He's on the ship with DJ, and DJ starts talking to him about how, like, the wealthy elite are selling to both sides, and that, like, there is no good and bad guys. There's just, like, people making profit, and then, like, the people who are kind of, like, gaming the system. Like, you're either in the system and you're picking a side, all of which have already been predetermined to fail or win depending on what the rich people want, or you're not on anyone's side, like DJ. Don't join. So dumb. So dumb. I could feel the bile rising from across continents.
Oh my god. I wish I didn't know that. I actually wish you didn't tell me that.
So, like, he has this moment on that ship also, and then when he's on it all culminates when he's on the ship fighting Phasma. She's like, "You scum," and he's like, "Yeah, rebel scum." And it's like, that's the moment where Finn picks a side.
Yeah.
So his arc is completely, it's not the same arc. It seems like the same arc, but it's not. And that's actually strengthened by the idea that he's willing to die, not to save Rey, but to save the rest of the Resistance.
Yeah,
If he takes down the battering ram cannon, even if it's a self-sacrifice, not for himself, not for Rey, but for the people there at the Resistance, for Rose, for everybody else, for Poe, who he probably loves. We hope.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't know, like, the idea that Rose stops him from doing that, it's kind of like, okay, like, I'm on the one hand, I'm happy that John Boyega's still in Star Wars, because I actually like the character of Finn. Like, I'm fine with the character of Finn.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, like, it kind of wrecks that arc a little bit. Like, it prevents it from coming full circle, and it's like, it's the whole thing with Han Solo
I
from
know, I was
the original.
just about to say that. It's the exact
Han
same.
Solo, Harrison Ford said the same thing. He's like, it makes sense for my character to die.
Yeah, no, the role of that character, the arc of that character, traditionally in every story is to die. That's to teach the audience that death is a thing, and that there are things bigger than them, and that they die for a worthy.
Self-sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but they just don't have suicide in that universe.
Yep, they just don't. We're full circle. Full circle. There's lots of other stuff, like the whole. We didn't really get to like the Haldo kind of like the big problems with the way that Haldo behaves, and then like the way that it's all dismissed and forgiven when she's like, "I like that kid" or whatever to Leia.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Yeah, that's
like,
super lame. I hated that. It didn't teach anyone any lesson or anything like that. In fact, it basically was akin to two mentally healthy people saying that boy is mentally unwell, and then they proceed to torture him as a result of that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it's. They're both like, here is a flaw with this guy. Yes, that is a flaw with him. Let's play with that for a while and let it almost cost us our lives.
And in the service of what? The themes of failure and redemption,
Yeah,
as
exactly.
Rian Johnson has said so many times. So like Haldo needs to fail too. So like, yes, every character who's on screen needs to fail and then redeem themselves in some way, except for Hux because he's an idiot.
Also, the right wing has described that moment as Poe being completely emasculated by the feminazis. Oh my god, can you imagine?
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, the white male crackshot pilot hero who ends up being the de facto leader of the Resistance, especially now that Princess Leia
totally
is dead.
emasculated.
Totally emasculated. Like, it's not like he's in charge of the entire Resistance or rebels now or whatever.
Oh my god, I've this year my New Year's resolution is to consume that kind of content ironically so that I can have fun.
Yep. It's the only way to consume it, because like it's everywhere now. So
yeah, man. One other cool thing I'll add. This is a neat little factoid. Don't know the difference between a factoid and a fact, but the code breaker that they're looking for in the casino, you know the guy when they identify him on camera, he's Justin Theroux, who is the cousin of Louis Theroux, famous documentary maker. So there's a cool little fact.
There you go.
So we agree, a 9 out of 10.
Not used at all. Yeah, I don't know. No. And I'll go back to, so here's the thing where like I'll end my myriad of points on this, and this is the point.
Here's the thing.
Here's the thing, is that I mentioned at the beginning that there's a negotiation between like my dislike for the film as a film and my dislike for it as a Star Wars fan. All of the gripes that I have with Luke, with specific things with like the way that Snoke and Kylo Ren, all of that thing goes down. I actually was rooting for the fact that Rey's parents are no one. I said that in our last episode.
You did, and I was a little bit cold to the idea, but then I warmed up to it. Yeah.
Turned out to be true. I'm fine with that. Although it would have been nice if there was still an explanation for why she's so powerful. But like, I'll even take that. I'll even take the Disneyfication of the Force, right? So that she doesn't require any training to be as powerful as she is. I'll even accept that. I'll accept all of that. I'll even take the damn porgs. Okay. Overused as they were, I will accept all of that. I am willing to take all of those things that I didn't like as a Star Wars fan, the treatment of the character of Luke, his motivation, like what he does, the weird moment with Puppet Yoda that was like a little bit like, I get what they were trying to go for, but it didn't really land. Like, it felt really weird.
Cheech and Chong or something.
The fact that Yoda, a Force Ghost, can summon lightning out of an ability that we've only seen with the dark side of the Force.
That's so true, yeah.
Like, I will take all of that. I would have taken it all and not batted an eye if the writing had been good. All of that stuff doesn't matter if you write a good movie with strong characters and strong dialogue. It doesn't have to be excellent. Nobody's pretending that Star Wars is the height of film, right? But it has to be competent, not rushed. And it has to make sense, right? Empire Strikes Back, like I said before, works because it's simple and it's elegant. It's not a complicated movie. Empire Strikes Back is as simple as it gets. There's point A, B, C, D for done. That's how that movie works. And it, like, call it cookie cutter, call it, like whatever you want. It's based on classic films, with the stuff that we've talked about before because we both like Empire.
Yeah.
But like, it works because it's elegant, right? And it's well written. The dialogue, like, there's barely any cheesy dialogue in that movie. It's the reason that like the Raiders of the Lost Ark works. It's the same kind of shit. Like, if you write good story, if you write good plot, if you write good dialogue, if you write good characters with motivations that an audience can understand without you feeling the need to have to go, there's a bad and mean wizard and he's going to kill us in this movie by Rian Johnson and Disney. Did we mention Disney
by
just
John
now?
Williams, edited by Bob Duxey.
Exactly. That's all fine if you have a competent story, but they didn't. They didn't, and that's why all of that stuff bubbles to the surface. Because yes, we are willing to accept, as an audience, we are willing to accept bad characterizations. We're willing to accept inconsistencies with the way the characters' motivations are portrayed. We're able to accept a myriad of things. But when they're put in a plot that disrespects its audience in the way that this movie does, and again, I think I'm just noticing it more with this movie because I give a shit about Star Wars and I care less about some other stuff. I'm very picky about which movies I go to see. Like, I don't really care. Like, I'll go see a Marvel movie, but I don't really care about a Marvel movie in the same way. And so I think that's why this is like an issue for me. But like, I'm like, all these things, like these problems with Hollywood, like that's what this movie is. Like, I don't think it this is my opinion. You don't have to share it. If you think I'm wrong, that's okay. Like, I don't need you to tell me that I'm wrong. I appreciate that you have a different point of view, and that's fine. I'm speaking more to the audience than to you.
No, I hate the movie now.
But like, here, and that's the other side of it, right? Like, so again, the point is that in that negotiation, I would be willing to accept all the problems that I have as a Star Wars fan if the film was a good film. I don't think it's a good film, and so all the other problems bubble to the surface and bother me more than they would have. Most of them probably wouldn't have even bothered me at all if the film had been a good film, a good story, a well-crafted narrative, and it's not. It's not, and it disrespects the audience. Yeah, I think that's the main gist of like what I wanted to say. So if people enjoyed, and here's the thing is, like, even I, who do not like this movie, am able to say there were some really fun, cool parts of this movie.
Yeah. There
was excellent cinematography, there was excellent set design, there was excellent ships, there was excellent aesthetics. Like, there was a lot of stuff to like in this movie. I still think it was a shitty movie, but that doesn't take away from the fact that some parts of it were excellent. And if that was enough for somebody, you're allowed. This is the problem I have with the people in the way. I feel like I've talked so much this episode. I'm so sorry. This didn't. I swear this was supposed to be a rant, but like, here's the thing. And my point. It's not. That's a joke now.
I'm titling this Star Wars: The Last Jedi review. Here's the thing.
Here's the thing. The thing awakens.
The last thing.
The last thing. Oh my god. Here's the last thing. Is that I think there's something seriously wrong with the way that we think and talk about movies, that if we enjoy something, it's automatically a 10 or a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
I think that's fundamentally flawed. That's not the way that critical thinking that works. That's not the way that critical thought works. That's not the way that criticism works. We're allowed to enjoy things and think that they're not like the height of their art form. Right? Like honestly, like if we're talking about all cinema ever, not just Star Wars movies, all cinema ever, the best Star Wars movie, being Empire Strikes Back, is probably a 7.5 at the highest out of all cinema, as objectively as possible. This is somebody who, like, this is probably one of my favorite movies of all time. We're talking about not personal ratings, not ratings within the Star Wars, like with everything out of all film. The best Star Wars movie is probably a 7.5. And then for me, you have, after that, you have Return of the Jedi, pretty much tied with A New Hope. And then you have Rogue One. And then much lower, you have The Force Awakens. And then way lower, you have The Last Jedi. What does that mean for the score for The Last Jedi? If the very best is a 7.5, The Last Jedi sitting at at most a 4 point something. In the history of cinema.
A very low 50% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty significant, to be honest.
There's a lot of talk about the tomato score being like the audience score being kind of hacked.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me either.
Doesn't surprise me. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that happens with video game scores all the time between Call of Duty and Battlefield. Like, we know this. This is something that happens on those websites. Yeah. So like I honestly think the user score, if it was real, it would still definitely be under the 90 that it has from critics. Because there's a lot of people, like, it's not a vocal minority. There's a lot of people who aren't happy with this film. A lot of Star Wars fans aren't happy with it. I don't know if they're articulating it in the correct way. Some of them are going after it for the wrong reasons, or maybe a lot of Star Wars fans are bigoted assholes. I don't know.
A lot of people are bigoted assholes, I guess.
What was the percentage for the U.S. election?
Yeah, we won't.
But I'm joking.
Yeah, I know.
I have lots of American friends, I swear. But you know, like, I just think it's a problem with the way that we talk about cinema and we talk about films, and like a problem with the way that critical thought is working right now. That we feel like just because we like something, it deserves a high score. And like I just don't think it does. Like, I don't think this is a good, like, competently made film. That doesn't mean that it's not fun. That doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it. And I wish people wouldn't kind of like package those two things together all the time, because I think it's really detrimental to the quality of something. For us to be able to say, like, yeah, that was fun. That was a fun time. I had a lot of fun with that. I don't think it was crafted well. Here are my issues with it. And then what happens when you fix those issues? You know, like, how much higher rated could this movie have been for me? But again, and there's also issues with numbered ratings. I'm using this as an example. Obviously, we don't need to you can't rate things objectively on a number scale. It just doesn't work like that. Yeah. But I'm using it to illustrate a point that I think you can like something, you can even love something, and appreciate the fact that it's not exactly well made.
I mean, as a lifelong Oasis fan, I can definitely, as a human who enjoys listening to Limp Bizkit, I can stand by that. Yeah.
So, and I think that's at the end of the day where I come down with this, and what I hope people take away from this conversation is that, like, of course you can love this movie, Al. Like, you're more than, it's not even about entitlement or anything like that. It's about, like, you love this movie. I think you can see some of my points, even if you don't agree with all of them.
I was expecting to bring you over to my side on this, but, like, I have been outboxed here, like, truly.
But it's not a competition.
No, I know.
That way. I'm not trying to turn you to the dark side.
No, it's a sparring session, if anything. But, like, your points are pretty fucking solid. Like it takes a lot of excusing, and that tells me something. You know, like when I can't punch any higher than I'm trying to do. But I'll tell you this. I'm still going to see that thing with them saying, yeah, we've got them on a tread, and I'm not going to say that's bad writing. I'm going to say General Hux is a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
He is. He is.
But this was a really good discussion, though, and I think it's really cool that we disagreed, like, you know,
Yeah.
on the most like parts. So I think that will be something that people will enjoy listening to. But
I think it's really awesome that you, as someone who really liked the movie, heard my points and even agreed with a lot of them, and still resolved to like the movie.
yeah,
Like that's the whole point of what I'm talking about. Like, my points are valid. Your enjoyment of the movie is valid. The enjoyment of the scenes that I enjoyed is valid.
yeah, exactly.
You can't take that away from somebody. Stop. Like, I hope nobody I think you have a pretty awesome audience. They've always been really great to me. Like, I've never seen any like sometimes I joke about them not like, this is when your audience turns on me. This is going to be the episode where your audience turns on me. But like, I joke about that, but I'm honestly, like, I've always loved reading the comments and stuff on episodes that I've been in, even episodes that I've not been in. And I think you have a really solid audience, and I hope that that's the point that they take away, that you can love something and be super critical of it. You can hate something and be completely honest about the fact that there's nothing actually wrong with it. You just don't like it for some reason.
Yeah, totally. I think I expect the comment section to be largely fair about that. Like, I'd say the only pushback you'll get will be people attempting to refute your points rather than people saying, "Fuck you, man! Star Wars rules." So,
No, and I love Star Wars, and that's partially why I'm upset.
yeah,
But, like,
yeah. I think that's come across well enough, though. I think and plus, this is the third Star Wars episode we've recorded together. So,
and I mean, I'm going to see Han Solo day one.
awesome.
And I'm going to see episode 9 day one, and I will even give Rian Johnson a chance and go see his trilogy if they don't yank it away from him.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Because it'll be different. Because maybe if he's doing something, I honestly think that and a lot of people have said this from the beginning, that like, going back to the Skywalker saga is the most difficult thing to do. Like, I'm not surprised that writers are having such a hard time coming up with, like, good, competent stories when they have to work in all of this excess baggage from 3 good films and 3, I think, not good films. Other people disagree. That's fine.
Like
that
4 decades ago, though.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
Exactly. It's impossible to balance those expectations.
It is. It totally is.
So, like, I don't blame them for struggling with this. There's people who didn't like Rogue One. I thought Rogue One was one of the most fun, like, Star Wars experiences that I've had. I think I liked it better than A New Hope, honestly. Like, that's difficult to say because A New Hope is the one that we've talked about this. It's the one that starts everything. So it's hard to say that something's better than it. But I don't know. Like, Rogue One's awesome.
It's objectively a better movie. There's no denying that.
I think it's the most Star Wars that Star Wars has been since Star Wars. You know?
Yeah.
It made me feel like a kid. And these movies haven't so far. I got it a little bit with Force Awakens, but, like, I just don't,
Yeah, me too, actually. But I will still go see it a third time, so I guess.
We have to have an episode. I have a friend on another podcast, Garbage Town.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I follow them as well.
They're fantastic. I'd be interested on seeing if we can get him, because he works in the film industry. I don't. So his views are really, really awesome. But it'd be interesting to talk about just, like, the state of Hollywood with someone.
Oh, man.
I'll see if I can talk to him about being on the show with you.
That would be unbelievable. Yeah, I'd totally love that.
Because there's this thing, and, like, we're not, obviously, you got to go, and we keep dragging this on. But there's this thing that's happened with these movies, like, why why am I forgetting his name? The guy who directed Rogue One.
Oh, good God.
I had it. It was in my head.
He did Godzilla.
Yeah, he did. He did do Godzilla.
David Edwards? Something Edwards?
Something Edwards. Yeah, that sounds right.
Oh, this
Re-
is...
Reg, Reg,
He directed Monsters as well, which is such an awesome movie.
he was in that scene with the salt that you were talking about, where like licks that the guy next to him is Ryan Edgar. Oh, no, that's not right.
David Edgar.
I'm just mixing.
No.
I'm just mixing both of their names together.
Oh my god, I need to Google it. This is gonna drive me fucking crazy.
So you Google that while I say this.
Gareth Edwards.
Gareth Edwards. There you go.
God,
is
we both suck.
So he was a director who had only had one semi-big budget film under his belt before.
Yeah.
He comes in to direct this movie, and at the end they ended up having to bring in another director to come in and do the reshoots. Phil Lord and Chris Miller unceremoniously let go by Disney, and they bring in an experienced director to come in and finish up the film. Ryan Johnson actually reportedly no problems, but the film comes out and there's a lot of it's a divisive film with fans.
Yeah.
Okay. It's really pointing to this thing, like this whole trend that Disney has with Marvel as well, of picking young directors from like an indie kind of environment who are used to working with way smaller budgets, and giving them an incredible amount of money and responsibility is potentially like not a good thing. Who would have thought? Because like look at Ryan Johnson. So he did Looper, was probably like his biggest budget film.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And then he did The Last Jedi. Looper's budget was $30 million US, and it made $176.5 million US at the box office. That's not bad. That's pretty good. $30 million. It's like not a low, but it's not that's a pretty low budget for what that movie was actually. The Last Jedi had a budget of $200 million. And it made $1.103 billion to date at the box office.
Mm.
Billion. So $200 million compared to $30 million. That's more than 6 times the budget of the highest budget film he'd ever done. And like, we don't think that there's a problem with that. Like with to some extent not unproven directors being given the like this insane amount of responsibility and like now there's all sorts of counter arguments to that. Like what had George Lucas done really before he came out with Star Wars?
What had David Fincher done before? They gave him Aliens 3.
But you forget that Star Wars, but Aliens 3 wasn't that good.
No, I know, but that's what I mean, is that what they do is they take these independent directors and they throw money at them because they're independent and they're kind of amateur, they'll do anything that the studio says. So as long as they hit certain notes. That's why
there's an implication of that being true, right?
Colin Trevorrow on Jurassic World, like that movie was garbage, and but it hits certain notes, and they knew
made by committee.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what it is. So that's why these independent directors keep springing up with huge budget movies.
Yeah, no, and it's an issue, right? Like I on some level, like I feel bad. Like it's really crappy. Yeah. What was I going to say? It doesn't matter. The point is, here's the thing. I do think we have to be careful with that kind of stuff. I don't think it's fair to these directors to give them that level of responsibility with that little experience. I think it's detrimental to the film. Like no time to write the script. How long the film's been in production for how long, and he's already had to rewrite the script.
Yeah,
that's why you have Ridley Scott coming out and saying like I would never direct a Star Wars film, because he was actually the one who, like one of the people who was talking about this and saying like they're destroying these young directors. Like I mentioned George Lucas and Star Wars, but like the original Star Wars was a low budget movie. What the budget for A New Hope? Let's check that out. A New Hope budget $13 million.
Yeah, but in today's money, that's $5 trillion.
it's more like the 30 million that
Looper, yeah.
Looper was. Like that's the budget that we're talking about. $200 million budget. I don't know. There's a problem there. There's something. Empire Strikes Back was 18 million, by the way.
Wow.
Phantom Menace 115.
I think George Lucas also did this thing with Empire where he was like, you get all the money from the movie forever, but I get all the toy sales. And then that's But I actually do need to go at this.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, that podcast idea sounds awesome. So let me know if you do make any progress in creating that. And other than that, thanks a lot for this discussion. It was really cool. Obviously, your links will all be in the description for everyone to check out. But like I said, you're pretty much a regular at this point anyway, so I don't think there'll be any confusion. So yeah, thanks a lot.
I hope the next time we talk, something I'm opinionated about, because I felt like I talked way too much, but I had to get it off my chest.
Well, I did find it like really illuminating, so that's